did. You ever wonder if we meant for this? Loving is sick. I never understood the point of it. Honey, we met. I never heard a single word of it. What's in the ditch? You wanna make me feel the worst of it. Side, leave me on the kitchen tile. 45 between my eyes, a miracle I'm still alive. Call a ride and watch me die. Walk out to another life. Close my eyes to pass the time and passed away later that night. Like true love, I'll be your first homicide. What a fool I must have been to have to learn so much. I swear to God, with everything I've had more than enough. I'm treading in the deep. I'm climbing up like 85 degrees. I'm falling back like leaves. I really think that this was all I needed. Now send me back home. I'll answer for my failures to St. Peter. I'll set aside my woes, bury most my past beneath my weakness in the center of my soul. But heaven only knows I'm not religious, and I'll never let it go. I'll never let it go. Oh, heaven only knows. There's a sea between us and them, full of creatures left by the ocean, storms that capture its beauty all in.
Hello everybody.
Then it be calm, and
It's
we
almost
may long for
almost feels
it
bad to talk over this song. I'm really liking this new album from Willow. Although I didn't notice. Hello, hello. Yeah, you should definitely check Willow out. He's great. I did notice that it's maybe a little bit too melancholic for the stream, but I really like this album. Hey Lost, how's it going? How are you doing? Again. So, we're gonna pick up where we left off the last time. And the problem is, which nobody told me, and the chat was full with people, is that there's no audio for the YouTube video. So I hope I fixed that now.
Variable. For the name, I want
Can
to
you guys hear that?
test scale. And on top of that, I want to force a data type, which is going to be an integer, and the default value should be 1. With that,
Can you hear that? Oh, Lost, that's great to hear. It's always great when people are doing great. Ooh, very nice. Very nice. Is it like a bigger type deal or like a game jam or something?
we have created a new variable. Next up, inside of the ready function, I want to use this test scale to change the scaling of this node to a 2. For that, I want to get the test scale
A bit too
and
much
set
if
it
there's
to
music at
2.
the same time.
And next up, let me
Probably.
minimize this window a bit so I can see the inspector. We want to look at the scale. And there you can see the node
nice.
scale.
Very nice.
The unscaled value is 1 and 1. And whenever you see 2 parentheses, it means it's a vector. The problem is, inside of the code, we're using an integer for the test scale. So we have to adjust it.
Yeah, sure.
But let's play around
You
I want to
have to
update
live from
this
something,
scale.
you know?
And the scale should be the test scale. And now we are already getting an error. And
Is
once
the
again, let me
audio
extend
mix
this
okay?
window so we can
Or
see
is the
what's going
music
on.
too much?
We are trying to assign a value of type int to a variable that
I'm going
wants
to play
have
something in the
vector to.
background. It's probably
So this is not going to work.
it should probably be an instrumental, right? Otherwise, it's going to be like 3 voices just struggling for attention. Which I don't actually have anything prepared. I don't know what I can and can't play. I'm gonna play around with test a little bit on the YouTube side. I'm more worried about. It is a little loud compared to me. Okay, good to know. Just a sec. I do see everything here on a graph, but you know that's not.
Scale always wants to have a vector.
Test.
But that we can account for quite easily. All we have to do is get vector 2 and then pass in the test.
I mean, I'm not
scale
going to
for
talk over
X
the
and Y.
video
And
that much.
now the Godot debugger is happy again. With that, I can run the entire thing. And now the Godot logo is twice as large. Perfect. Which means with that, we
Okay, we
can
did
work
all that?
inside of the process function to continuously increase the size. For that,
As soon
I
as
want
we
to
get
the test scale again.
As soon as we get a little further into this, and I know how to like spawn objects in the scene dynamically in code and things like that, I'm gonna start working on my thing. on my idea on the side, and then we're just gonna, build up on it, because my idea is pretty simple for the time being.
And increase it by a very small amount, let's say 0.01. Other than that, I want to get the scale property and set it to a new vector 2 with the test scale for both x and y.
So can you talk about what you're working on, or is it all hush-hush for now?
Try all of that. And now it's not growing. Let's instead change it to a 1. And now if I run this again, this is definitely working. The issue with adding 0.1 is that test scale is always going to be an integer. And when we add 0.1, we would get 1.1. And since the value for test scale always has to be an integer, Godot only takes the first value, which is going to be a 1. Anything after that is going to...
I was thinking about it, now that I'm thinking about game dev a little bit more. The problem with RPG is that everything is pretty one and done. You see one encounter, or you see one level, or one town, or one NPC, and then you linearly go through the game, and that's much more work than if you consider like an open world where you make a map and there's backtracking and things like that. Okay, yeah. You have to earn the respect first to be in the know. Yeah, sure. Where's my chat here? Do the messages just disappear that quickly? That shouldn't be the case. Test. Should stay at least for like 30 seconds, but I didn't see it. Maybe because I changed. That shouldn't matter. Okay, I don't know. I was thinking about that, even like a I don't wait, did you do... Yeah, you did that now. Yeah, I was already live. I didn't see it, but I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, I'm looking into as much tutorials as I can, but I don't want to stay, in tutorial hell. I want to get going and start making my own stuff as soon as possible, just because yeah, I'd rather learn things on the fly with actual, things I need. Okay, cool. I'll definitely be checking that out. But I wanted to focus on this one just because it's a top-down game, which is kind of what I want to make. Because that's what I was talking about, like the how many, assets and stuff, and how many backtracking or how many levels and level design you have to actually put in. And a top-down game compared to a side-scroller seems to be a lot easier, and I really like exploring in games, and I think you can get much more of a sense of wonder and exploration on a top-down game than on a side-scroller, because everything is either, up or above you or off to the next screen. So yeah, for what I'm trying to do, for now at least, I'm not that interested in side-scrolling or on the side stuff. And more interesting on top-down games. Because I don't know if you played Darkwood, but that's like one of the most amazing games I have ever played. It did so much with, I'm not gonna say so little, but you can tell it's made by a smaller team, but what they did, they polished that thing to perfection. It should be studied for like game design. And I say that like I have some authority on that, but yeah.
To be ignored. If we had a float, this would work better, but in this case, the code is only going to work if...
I wanted to see what he said here. Because test scale is an integer.
One is that test scale is always going to be an integer. And when we add 0.1, we would get 1.1. And since the value for test scale always has to be an integer, Godot only takes the first value, which is going to be a 1. Anything after that is going to be ignored. If we
Wait, but he says everything after that is going to be ignored, but it's called every frame, and isn't it eventually going to go to 1.6 or to 1.7, or it just stays at 1.1? You should definitely get Darkwood, and you should definitely play it.
Float, this would work better, but in this case, the code is only going to work if we have full numbers, like 1, 2, and 3, and so on. But alright, with that, we have a couple of really important basics of GD script. That being said, there's still quite a bit to go.
You're not sure what he means by this, yeah. Because even if it is just 1.1, if you add a float to an integer, it should update every frame, and eventually it's going to come to 2, right? Yeah, test scale has been up here, it's been put. Now, because of you, I know that's called a container, so it's an integer container, yeah.
The really important issue that we have right now, let me minimize all of this and return back to the 2D scene. Right now, we can only influence the logo itself. But what if we wanted to go from level and then influence the logo? This we can't do right now. But this video is getting quite long, so let's do all of this in the next video. Let's continue talking about coding in Godot. And for this part, I want to focus on two major things. Number one, targeting one node from another node, which means I want to use the level node to influence the sprite. On top of that, I want to work with the flow. So we're going to use some if.
Hi, Ironic. I'm learning Godot, but yeah, I do have a game in mind. At least, I kind of broke everything down into processes, or what do I need to learn side things to eventually make my dream game in 5 to 10 years. But yeah, I have a bunch of ideas, yeah. And I have a one that's in my mind pretty simple, where I can start by just, scaling sprites, randomly spawning objects and things like that. It shouldn't be that. So what I was thinking, I can show you this. So what I was thinking, let me do this again. You know how I'm not signed in. Just a sec. But I can show you anyway. You know how there's a lot of this mobile games that are basically on a highway and you just move a character around? So I'm sorry. So I was thinking about doing something like that, but like a skydiver, and you can freely move around the scene, and then the objects would spawn on a smaller size of the screen, very small, and then basically, if the center is the scaling point, then the objects are gonna zoom past you at the right scale or the right perspective that you feel like they're passing you by. And then I thought about making like maybe a twin stick shooter where you can shoot at stuff and you have to avoid obstacles and things like that. So I think from a programming standpoint, it would cover like all the basics that, spawning objects, scaling, rotating, moving, doing damage, things like that. I was thinking of not using a 3D scene, but using 3D objects from maybe like, I don't know what those markets are called, where you can download free 3D stuff. Because I was thinking about like, if a thing is coming towards you and past you, you with perspective, you kind of see it on the side as well. And if it's a 2D sprite, it's just gonna look, not gonna look pretty realistic, but you know, you could skew it a little bit so it flies past you, but it would look pretty flat. And what I was also thinking is like you can't use pixel art with that amount of scaling going on, because it's gonna dither and look pretty shitty, right? So I was thinking either I have to use vector graphics for the sprites, or I would use 3D models. And I did some 3D modeling, so I'm pretty sure I can do, you know, a pretty basic drone, or, you know, what else? A balloon, a zeppelin, or something like that. Let me just log in real quick. Here on to the Figma thing. I came to this idea because my girlfriend is really crazy about and is into skydiving. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do a skydiving game. And also, I was thinking about doing little rotoscoped animations. I thought that, but that's more advanced, I guess. The one thing that I thought would be really cool is... Just a second. There we go. Now we should be logged in, and you should not be seeing this thing anymore. What I thought it would be really cool is, like, you know, you see your character from behind as he's falling, and then you maybe see like a few shots coming from behind you, and then you have to turn around, and you have like a shooting gallery of, you know, helicopters flying by and dropping paratroopers on top of you, so you have to turn around, and so it will basically be it's basically the same thing as it was coming down, just reversed. Oh, lost, don't worry about it. And doing a rotoscoped animation for the split, for the transition, so it looks like your camera, you know, flies behind your shoulder, and you turn around and then you shoot. That would be cool as fuck. And I have no idea how to implement it yet, but I know then you're basically falling the other way around, and it shouldn't be that harder to make that perspective work once I get the perspective of falling down to work. I guess. Ironic, are you a game dev? Are you doing stuff?
Statements and some for loops. Let's jump right in. If you got so far, this shouldn't be too difficult. Here we are back in the code, and you can see we have a level node and then a logo node with a script. All of this stuff we have done in the last part. What I now want to do is to give the level node a script as well, which I do by attaching a new script. All of the default options for this one are okay. I usually don't change any of those besides the path.
Nice.
What you see most...
How much experience do you have in projects? What did you do? Yeah, that was kind of my main. I mean, I watched a lot of Thor's videos or streams and clips, and he always say, you know, think about the game you want to make, and then reverse engineer what engine you're gonna use. I did mess around a little bit with Game Maker a long time ago. My main problem is I already started this like a couple of times in my life. My main problem is if I don't touch it for a week or two, it just evaporates from my brain. And since GDScript is the syntax seems very easy, and it's close to Python, which can be used in other things, it seemed like a really good place to start. And also it seems very, I'm not gonna say simple, but streamlined when it comes to 2D stuff. So I want to get really comfortable in 2D and then maybe switch a little bit into 3D. I don't know how old you all guys are, but if you remember the game called Team Buddies on PlayStation 1. I would really like to try and do like a remake PvE horde tower defense type thing that's multiplayer encoding and all that. Learning how to read the docs. Yeah, you mean the documentation inside the engine? Its own documentation? That's gonna come in this tutorial. I already did. Yeah. Ah, control click was it? Yeah, I thought it was middle mouse. Yeah, you're right. I am gonna try and do that. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a CAD designer. I've been working in 3D like for the past 15 years at least, so I think it's not gonna be that hard of a transition, you know, but it's a lot of maths, and although I am in engineering and CAD designer, my math is really bad. But I had bad teachers my whole life. But what I really like is that this is finally it's math that you can use in a concrete example. It's not just like learning Egyptian hieroglyphs, which was always a problem for me, you know.
Most of the time is that people change the script next to the scene that it is attached to. Which means in my case, I want to add the level script in the same folder where we have the level scene.
Why is it showing me invalid path? Object. Okay.
Which is
Cool. If it has help. I mean, I see it's really gained in popularity, and Thor basically said that it's like, you know, Blender open source, and it started really rough, but people are really they really like polished it, and I even saw a really great plugin that only deals with like dialogues in games where you can, you know, so yeah, there's a lot of plugins, useful things. I'm gonna be checking all that out, but I know I'm talking about things now very open, like concrete, but I know that's all gonna change, and that's all way down the road. My dog wants to come. Did you? Because just getting over this tutorial is gonna take like a month at this point. But yeah. Hey, hi. There we go. You wanna learn Godot too? Duh. Yeah, I mean, that's what I noticed, is that like the community and the contribution to Godot is pretty great. I wanted to start with Unity and learn start learning C# because that's also you know, a language that would be very useful to know in other stuff as well. But they kind of messed up everything, and I was waiting for it to clear out. And Unity is more of a 3D thing. I would really like to get used to 2D at first.
all of the default options for this one are okay. I usually don't change any of those besides the path. What you see?
Oh, I think. Come on, Godot. Hello. There we go. I think the path isn't working because I moved it manually. Is that right? Scenes, levels. I mean, this should be fine. Oh yeah, it's okay now. There we go. Yeah. I know. I think like Ori wasn't Ori made in Unity. Oh, nice. Okay, so I might as well learn GD script first and learn the basics of programming on an easier language, and then try to switch slowly. Yeah.
See, most of the time is that people change the script next to the scene that it is attached to. Which means in my case, I want to add the level script in the same folder where we have the level scene. Which is what I have right now, so...
And also my logic was, like, I'm not gonna start Unreal or some huge engine that has a million things that I don't need for the simple games that I want to make. My end goal, eventually, I really want to get into Go-up AI programming, because the roaming AI and the emergent gameplay that can come from that is one of the most amazing things in gaming for me. And I think it's not being used that much.
I'm gonna click on open.
I know you didn't go backwards. That's exactly the route. C++ than C#, and C++ is bigger and more complicated than C#, right? Yeah, but you still did GD script first. Hey.
And then on create. Now we can see we have two script symbols because both of these nodes have a script attached to them. We also have the scripts available in here, which...
Game suck up? No. Oh, is that something with AI too? Oh, you're a vampire. Yeah, okay.
Voice to talk to the AI that lives in these houses and convince them to let me inside. They're actually going to be listening to what I say and responding in real time. I can find different disguises to lie to them, and also there's Neighborhood Watch that are patrolling the town, who I'm going to have to avoid by turning into a bat and flying away. Please do hit that like button to help this video get shared, and let's begin.
Sure.
Wear red hoodie and jeans and a black beanie. Okay. Why does this literally look like what I wear when I... Ah, Dr. Not Dracula. How delightful. Please come in. But remember,
Wait.
I'm going to need a new disguise if I'm going to go in there. OMG, what's cooking, good looking? You totally caught me finishing up a Netflix binge session, but I'm here for the excitement you're bringing. What brings you to my doorstep at this late hour? Okay. Seems a bit saucy, millennial. Hey, baby. I'm a chef that's gonna do the most stripping. I've been sent to do a strip. Like, sorry, not sorry. This isn't a strip club. I'm not here for that kind of gig.
That's a cool idea. Yeah. But I was thinking more about like goal-oriented decision making of roaming and AI, and I still think like Stalker is one of my favorite games just because of that fact. The way they made the world feel real with the factions and mutants roaming around and doing their own thing, and especially how they upgraded all that with the modding community in Anomaly is in Stalker Anomaly. It's one of a kind. Hi Imran. Let me link you this video. It has been really helpful so far. And one of the best things this video and this clear code guy actually does is he explains something and then he tells you, okay, go and do it on your own now. Pause the video, and then later he explains it if you get stuck. So you're actually, you know, learning and doing, learning by doing, and not just watching a tutorial, which is really, really good.
It is quite nice to switch between the two. Now, inside of the level, you can tell that we don't have the functions we had inside.
I also just started, man. This is my second stream, and I got through like... Oh, you can't see it from me? Let me move my camera. Whee! I just got through like an hour of the video, so there's 11.5 hours to go, and the second part is, I think, 3 more hours. So, yeah, I wanted to get through the basics, and then I'm gonna try and do my own thing, or I'm gonna try and do my own thing in parallel, and figuring shit out as I go. But I don't even know where to start if I don't know what tools I have to use, you know?
Side of logo. But that is only because of the preset I have selected. You can totally add func and ready, and then you get the same function. In there, I can print, let's say, level node is ready. And once I have that, I can run the entire thing again, and let me close it right away. And look at the output again. There we get level node is ready, meaning this ready function works just fine. These underscore functions you have available all of the time, meaning you can always use ready or process and a host of other ones. Let me minimize the output, and then we can work a bit more inside of the level script. Now, I could be running any kind of code, the same thing we have done inside of the logo. But I want to do something else. What I want to do is from inside of this script, level.gd, I want to update the logo. And let's say I want to update the rotation. That we can do quite easily, but first of all, I want to go back to logo.gd, and in there,
Hey, Enigma.
I want to
Welcome to the stream over on Twitch. How's it going?
comment out the test
I hope this day finds you well as well. Well,
scale, because this is scaling everything too fast and we can't see what's happening anymore.
I'm doing great.
To comment out code in GDScript, you would use Control or Command and K. If you add that, you are adding a comment. Alternatively,
okay, cool.
You can also simply
Let me write that down. I am gonna forget that. What did you say? Command, Control, and K?
K. To comment out code in GDScript, you would use Control or Command and K. If you add
Control,
that,
K. Okay. But I'm using Figma for this. It's just like a big corporation editing brainstorming tool. And I really like having everything on one canvas and then just zooming in. See, I have notes here. I have like the glossary, which is not, I have maybe not filled that much as I should have. Okay. Comment, select that text. Oh, yeah, maybe that's a... Maybe that was there, but you didn't know about it? Or maybe it's a Godot 4 thing. I don't know.
you are adding a comment. Alternatively, you can also...
It's going all right, just hanging out in my car, trying to build the willpower to start doing what you're doing. Man, do it! I'm 37 years old and I'm just starting it. I'm suspecting you're younger. Do it now. You're never gonna have as much time as and willpower as you have now. Oh, lost. Yeah, then see? We're all learning something. Yay! That's great.
simply add the hashtag symbol and then you're adding a comment. So I can get, for example, to positions, add the hashtag, and then you have commented it out. Both is fine. I tend to use Control or Command K because it's a bit faster, but choose whatever you like. With that, if I run the code again, you can see that we have the Godot symbol moving to the right, and we have a starting rotation of 45 degrees, which is what we're getting here. Let's
Oh yeah, and what I would suggest to you, Enigma, and Imram as well, You can join the Discord. We are a pretty small community right now, but Lost is here and he's a bit more experienced. And you know, we can do it all together. My main problem is if I, for instance, Thor's Pirate Software's Discord, if you join, there's a million people there, and that's cool, but it feels a little bit impersonal, and it would take a lot longer to, you know, get connections and actually become friends with people. And in a smaller chat like this, and we all start together and fight on, or, you know, struggle with the same things is maybe not a bad idea.
Comment out this one as well. So we are starting with.
Let me link it because people people on Twitch don't have the people on YouTube don't have the link readily available like people on Twitch have. So let me do this a couple of times. Maybe here for Twitch as well. There you go.
A rotation of 0 degrees. That is looking like a good start.
Thanks for the follow. Anyway.
Now, inside of level.gd, I want to change the rotation of the logo. For that, we first of all have to get the logo. And this is what I talked about in the last video. Let me bring up the slide again. There, towards the end, I talked about that we can target nodes in 2 ways. We could either use getNode and then a node path, or a $sign along with the node path. Both of those would give us a node. And then on this node, we can change the properties. For example, we could get the node path and then .oz.
Help me choose between Godot, Unity, and Unreal. My mind just keeps going to Unreal because the insane number of features they offer. Also, Unity feels very easy to me. Oh, you're 37 as well. Okay, let's go. What are we? Millennial gang? I don't know. While I'm not as experienced in any of this to be making suggestions to you, but what I've heard from experienced people, you should choose the engine that's gonna best suit your job, what you want to do, your project. So you should actually think about the games you want to make and then reverse engineer what engine you're gonna use. For me, Unreal had so much things that I don't need right now, right? It has a huge amount of modules, and especially now with the newest Unreals, it has so much under the hood, which if I just want to learn to program and make 2D games at first, it just seems a whole lot of, you know, unnecessary extra padding or things that can confuse me along the way. And people already told me here in chat that have more experience than me that jumping between languages is not that big of a deal, and jumping between engines once you understand the programming way of doing things. So my logic was, I'm going to start with something that has an easier language with less syntax problems that I need to worry about, and that it's an engine for a specific thing that I want to do at first. So I want to get real cozy in 2D first, then switch to 3D and do things that way. Oh, and another thing that was a really, really good like life lesson or thing you want to consider. I've been reading a book. I bought a huge bundle of game design books, I think 2 months ago, on Humble Bundle. Let me just see what the name of this book is, because it has a pretty, like, you know, generic technical name. So let me see. Drive. Projects. Game design. Players Making Decisions is the name of the book. Show you. Can I not just copy paste a picture inside here? Inside the browser? No. Players Making Decisions. Yeah, that's the book. So I've been reading this book a little bit about game design, and there's a really good anecdote of a pottery teacher that's teaching pottery, I think like in an arts, college or something like that. And he said that he divided the classroom into groups. One group at the end of the semester needed to make a perfect vase, and the other group just needed to do as much vases as possible. So it was about quantity, and the other was about quality. And it is said that by the end of the semester, the group that just needed to do as much vases as possible did the better job of making a perfect vase than the other group. Why? Because they were just doing it and doing it and doing it until they understood and got the feeling for the pottery, while the other group was sitting down and just philosophizing, and not worrying about actually putting in the work. So just start making vases, man. I'm looking to develop my dream game, a dystopian 3D adventure game. I'm a web designer, UX designer by profession. I have my dream game in mind as well. But the thing is, the way I think about it is, okay, to make my dream game with this many systems in it, I need to separate those systems into smaller bits and do little games that just focus on one aspect of it, right? Because you don't know what problems you're going to encounter until you actually start doing it, and you're going to get better at it, and then eventually you can make your dream game. And you should think about that like a process is going to take minimally 5 years. At least that's how I'm looking at it, right? 5 years till you get to that point, and then 5 years to make the game.
I hope you can read that. And we could simply attach a new vector too. Back in Godot, I want to get a node. And now the autocomplete is already giving me a couple of options. We either have a dot, which doesn't do anything, or we have the logo. And with that, we have the logo. What we could do now, for example, is to change the rotation.
Okay, so what I've noticed is the dot always digs one level deeper into the thing you're referring to. So for instance, if you're referring to scale and you put a dot, then you can actually influence every individual aspect of the scale variable, or I don't think that's a variable, but you know what I mean. So here as well, we get the node logo, and then with the dot, we go deeper inside. And now we can probably put a dot here and go deeper into rotation. Okay, cool. So you are already developing stuff. So you said you feel cozy in, or you feel it feels easy. Unity feels easy to you. So you're doing things in Unity, I suspect.
And for that, we need degrees. Let's change it to 90 degrees. With that, if I run all of this again, there we have a 90-degree rotation for the Godot symbol.
Okay.
This is one way to get a node. Alternatively, what you are probably going to use much more often is a $, and then the name or the path of the node you want to target. In this case, logo. If I run the entire scene again, we are getting the same result. As a matter of fact, you don't actually have to type it. What you can also do, if I get rid of it, you can simply select and click
nice,
on the
drag and
node you want
drop.
to get, and then drag it into the code editor.
Oh, nice.
And if you then drop it, you get the name of the node, or rather the
Property.
path of the
You're
node.
right.
Same thing. This we can also target multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it felt to me. I started as well. Because I did some 3D modeling in Maya and in Blender, things like that, because, you know, I'm basically drawing things in 3D my whole professional life, but it's very rigid, very engineering, and I was like, oh, please let me just draw something organic, you know, with a little bit, where there's a little bit of creativity behind it. So yeah, I did that. Yeah, Unreal really feels like an overkill if you're just starting from absolute scratch and have no idea about programming or anything. But I don't know. It's also nice that it just works. Like it seems very polished, and you know, it seems like there's a lot of things in the background that just make things work. Lighting engine seems amazing. Yeah, I don't know. But also I have the problem of, if you don't have the experience to actually dig into the graphics and make your own shaders and make your own, you know, custom 3D models, and you're just using the asset store and the Unreal Engine's like default values, I've noticed that there's a lot of games that just look very samey. Oh, you did as well. Cool. Yeah, I started that as well, and I just stayed in it. But thankfully, we don't use AutoCAD anymore.
For example, we can once again use func_process, then get the logo with $logo.
Oh, hi, you live. I started Lua in the command console. Oh, wait. Fuck, I thought I was talking to one guy. I'm talking to two people. I got confused. Hi, you live. I'm focused on making smaller games with the best features going into the final dream game. Yeah, okay, I was just talking about the dream game with Imram. So I didn't look at the name, and it just, you know, continued normally. Yeah. How you doing, man?
And then the rotation in degrees. We could, for example, plus equal 0.1. If I now run this again,
that's not
we get a very slow rotation. Let's increase the number by a
Wait, did he delete the test scale variable from logo? Yeah, he must have, right? Otherwise it wouldn't work at all. Okay. Not test scale, rotation. Let me do the same. Python book on AI. Yeah, I'm really interested about AI as well, especially the go up way of going about it. I'm fascinated by the emergent gameplay that provides. And I've been playing a lot of like RimWorld and things like that, and I'm really looking forward to Norland. If you guys don't know what Norland is, it's basically Crusader Kings. If Crusader Kings and RimWorld had a baby.
Welcome to Norland. In this video, we will discuss the core mechanics of the game, such as social interactions, economy, religion, and diplomacy. At the beginning of the game, you create your noble family and choose a province. Provinces differ in their set of resources, climate, and level of danger.
You know, I think you get the idea.
Skills of your social life. Church services fulfill your interactions, inherit the talents and innate.
I think it's coming in early access this week, this month.
Amount, let's say I want to increase it by 1 degree on every frame of the game. That is much more visible, and certainly it is working. To make it even more visible, let me change it to a 10. If I run this again, much more visible. Cool. That is what I wanted. So with that, we can now target other nodes. Next up, I want to work on the flow. Let's say I want to add an if statement that if the rotation is greater than 180.
See, Imram, that's why I started streaming my learning. I do get distracted by you guys in the chat, but it's amazing. Me fighting procrastination was the main reason I started streaming this. Because, you know, yeah, it's so easy to get distracted, especially. Or what you can do is, if you have like a shitty laptop or some other PC that's not, you know, your private PC, and it's not something where you sit at your place where you normally game or just waste time, just take that laptop and go somewhere where you won't be distracted, you know?
80 degrees. I want to change the rotation back to 0. For that, we will need an if statement. I want to get if, and then I can target the logo once again, and I want to get the rotation underscore degrees. And if that is greater than 180, then I want to get this same node, so I can just copy it and set the rotation degrees to 0. Also, I realized this should be an uppercase L for both of these nodes. What you want to keep.
Okay, so why does he do that? Because if we run this now, what happens? Invalid degrees. Oh no! Godot crashed for me. No. Don't do this. Nice! Yeah, a FNAF-like game should not be... I mean, everything is complicated, but you know what I mean. That is a realistic type of thing, yeah. As a first type of project. Okay, my debug thing crashed. Let me just save all this. So invalid get index degrees on base float. Aha! I don't have the variable. Equals 0 at first. Let's see if that makes it work. Stop it. Invalid get index degrees on base float. Add function process. Yeah, you're showing me this. That's fine, but let's see what happens if I write float here. Float here. I fucked something up. No, don't crash. Save. Save. Okay. It's rotation degrees. But that's not a variable, that's a property. So I don't need a variable up here. Oh, did I write it wrong? Underscore degrees? Ah, you're right. Thank you. Let's see now. Oh, man. Yeah, okay, cool. That is working. Aha, why does he change the rotation after 180 degrees? Let's put this on like 20 so we see actually the difference. Problem is probably that it just goes into millions, right? Let's see. Print. If I say this, it should print that, right? Unexpected identifier in class body. Maybe I can put it here. And I see what he wants from me here. Print. Print convert. Aha, variable needs to be. Doesn't it print a string when it's in commas? Indent. Aha, it was not part of the function, you mean? Yeah. Okay, cool. Ah, yeah, I see. Fuck. Rookie mistakes, guys. This is gonna keep happening for a while. Okay, let's see. Yeah, if you look at the numbers here behind me, it's going crazy. So yeah, we want to reset it after 180. Okay. Yeah, the error is useless. Oh, hey Alexa. Welcome to the stream. Oh, and Lucky. Oh, we have so many people here. I'm gonna have to start differentiating this by color or something. Hi, good to have you all here. Did I miss anything? Nope. How are you guys doing? How's it going? Please, it's very nice to have experienced people here to help out with all this. Okay, so he did an if statement. Should put like a comment here. Cap the, not cap, reset the angle number rotation. Shouldn't it be after 360 degrees and not 180? Let's do 360. I think it's going to be better. Okay. So he does an if thing. I need to indent to keep myself in the function. If this is bigger than 180. Then reset this to 0. Not 180, we'll put a 360 on it. Ah, nice, Lucky. Ironic, you're going way too far with, you know, I don't even know what rep F is. Let's just go step by step, please. I'm lost. I'm lost enough as it is.
Or read. Both is totally fine. Let's run all of this again.
Yep.
And this...
He did it wrong because it's flipping. And I did it right. Haha! Okay, let's do it smaller. I mean, he didn't do it wrong. He did it on purpose to illustrate a point. But, you know, let me get my small victories, please. Oh yeah, and if we print now. There we go. Ah, the decimal values are really strange. Like it skips. Is that like lag in the frames? That's really interesting. Maybe if we cap it as an integer, that wouldn't happen. Huh. Or later we're gonna divide it by delta, and it's not gonna be a problem anymore. See, I'm getting this. I think it's gonna be fine.
It's quite hard to see, but let me run it again. And it is certainly working because the face of Godot is switching around. This isn't too visible, but the really important thing is the if statement. You basically add if, like in Python, and then the condition. For this one, we're comparing the rotation degrees against a number, 180 in this case. What you also see quite often is that people put parentheses around them. The result would be the same. And this is something I really want to practice.
How did he select the text and then wrap it into parentheses? Huh. That seems... That should be a really useful shortcut to know. And I don't know it. Fuck.
To practice. I want you guys to update the position of the sprite. If it is greater than 1000, move it back to 0. And I am purely talking about the horizontal axis. If this is our starting position, 0, we're going to add a line of 1000 pixels. The sprite is going to start on position 0 and to continuously move to the right. Once it reaches the point 1000, I want you guys to move it back to the starting position. That way it doesn't move infinitely to the right. Also, all of this has to be on the level node. So now pause the video and
that's the info. That's the info I was waiting for. Okay, this is really cool. I like how he says, guys, now go ahead and do this on your... Okay, this was all... This was all rotation. Oh yeah? Okay, let me try this. Let me try it. So if I do this and then wait. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I did it wrong. I did the closing ones. That's why it... Okay. Cool. So this was the rotation. Let's move that down and let's do... Oh, what? No, movement. Hey Imran, thank you very much for dropping by. Hope to see you in the future. Have a nice day. So for the movement, we are gonna call logos position x equals 0. Right. Then we're gonna say I think we can do that here in the ready, right? Ah, yeah, we already have that here. And then we're gonna say logos position x is gonna be plus equals 10. And then we're gonna use if logo position x is bigger than 1000. I need a semicolon, semicolon, double point. I have no idea. Hey Alex, yeah, the horror team is not the programming that stayed from before when I was streaming horror games. Yeah, equals 0. There we go. We declare it up here that it's 0. Then we make it bigger. When it gets higher than 1000, we set it back. That should work. Let me just Control K, right? Yes. So let's there we go. And now go back. Go back. Hello? Let's do this a bit bigger. Wait, it didn't change the speed, did it? Huh. Aha. Because I have movement here as well, right? Position, vector. Yeah, we need to delete all that. So defining starting position. Yes. Okay, so it looks like it prioritizes if you call another node through another node, it still prioritizes the code in the node itself, which makes sense. Okay, this should work now, right? Yeah, it's just moving too fast. Wait. There we go. That's way too fast. Okay, cool. Hey, I troubleshoot that myself. I feel pretty proud of that.
Back in the code, the rotation is kind of confusing, so I just want to get rid of it, along with the comment. We don't need any of that.
Sure.
Instead, I want to get an if statement. Once again, I want to get the logo. On that, I want to get the position, and this is going to return a vector 2. Meaning on that, I can either target x or I can target y. In my case, I only want to look at x. If this is greater than 1000, I want to do something. So colon, and if I now press enter, we get another level of indentation. Just to see if this is working, I want to print, let's say, position exceeded. With that, I can run the code again. And now if
I see this over and over again in tutorials, is that if they do an if statement or any type of thing that needs to be checked, so maybe like an area, and then it needs to, you know, do a flag or a check if you get into that area and things like that, they always do a print first to see if it's the right thing that is checking to begin with. I need to get into habit of doing that. That seems, maybe not with simple stuff like this, but that seems like a good practice to have for sure.
we reach 1000 pixels, at some point we get position exceeded. With that, we know this if statement is working.
And Alex, that's part 1. What did you think? This was a game? You think that we're fooling around?
Working perfectly fine.
You think making video games is easy?
That means we can use it. Once again, let me copy it and set the position to 0.
Okay,
If
let's see
we
if
run
he
the code now,
gets in the same
we
problem
should
as I
move
did.
back to 0.
Yeah, he does.
Although we are not. Let's explore what
Well,
went
Alex is
wrong.
not.
And I would very much recommend you to investigate this yourself. You can find all of the information inside of the logo GD
I already
script.
did clear code. I did good.
We do know that this if statement is working. So something is wrong with this line.
By the way, that's the guy.
Well, the issue is inside of
The video seems really, really good. I'm not experienced, so I don't know if, but the way he's teaching seems really well constructed. Everything, you know, goes step by step. Every concept, and then he has, you know, a part where you do the thing on your own, and then
the logo GD script.
well, I was for a long time. I just didn't pull the trigger to actually sit down and do it, and that's what I'm doing with this stream, because procrastination is a hell of a drug.
We are storing the position inside of this vector that I called pos.
Yeah, right, Lucky? And you would know, you have more experience in this than I do. So yeah, it seems, it goes slow because, you know, I was kind of thinking that it's going to take me at least half as much, double the amount of time the tutorial is. But I definitely did not expect to have so much of you guys in chat, because when I was streaming just video games before, and because I was changing games every stream, I didn't have that much people watching. So this is very nice. I like this. So basically, it's very evenly spread out into thirds. So third of the time I'm talking to you guys, third of the time Clear Code is talking, and third of the time I'm actually, you know, doing the thing.
And we are updating this pos vector, and then we are setting the position.
Aha, let's go.
And
This is
movement
important.
working. So something is wrong with this line. And well, the issue is inside of the logo GD script, we are storing the position inside of this vector that I called pos. And we are updating this pos vector, and then we are setting the position to the pos. The problem essentially is inside of level. When we are updating position.x and set it to 0, we are actually setting the position of this sprite to 0. However, what is happening right after?
Thank you very much, Lucky. Hope to see you in the future, man. Have a good day.
Logo.gd, we are setting another
Nice of you all to drop by.
position, the one we have specified here. Because of that, x and set it to 0, we are actually setting the position of this sprite to 0. However, what is happening right after? Inside of logo.gd, we are setting another position, the one we have specified here. Because of that, we are overwriting what we have done inside of this line. Now, to fix that, all we have to do is to change the position to pos. That way, we don't update the position itself. Instead, we are updating this pos vector, which is responsible for the position.
That seems very messy. Like, why would you define a variable in the node, keep, yeah, I mean, because it's maybe like an edge of the level, so you want the first node of the object to move independently, but the level node then dictates if it runs off screen or things like that. Yeah, okay.
Which means now this should be working. And there we go. This is looking much better. It keeps on working, perfect. Basically, we want to control the position with the pos variable, which is a vector too. And when you target a node from another node, in this case the level, you can target any of the attributes. They can either be some of the inbuilt ones, like position, or it can be one of the attributes that you have created, like pos. You can target
so those are all
fine.
attributes.
Finally, before I finish this video, let's have a look at the for loop. And for that, we're going to need an array. And let's create one in the entire scope of the class. I want to
Errors, loops I can understand, but arrays were always a very big problem for me. And I know they are basically for inventory or any type of lists, it's a must-have. So I really need to get this down.
create var test array, and this is going to be an array that is only accepting, let's say, a string for the data inside. For an array, you need square brackets, and since we only have strings inside, we will need either single or double quotation marks. Usually what you see in Godot are double quotation marks, but single ones work just as well. I'm going to add some random words. It doesn't really matter what you add in here, and stuff. Also, let's extend the entire thing so we can see all of it. Cool. Now we have an array full of strings. If you want to look at every single value individually, you would need a for loop, which basically means we want for, and then we need a name for the value, just like in Python. Let's call it for I.
Clear code. Please don't say just like in some other language. I'm starting from scratch, my man. Dog. Yes.
In test array.
Doggy.
Then we need a colon, and then inside of...
Yeah, basically, if you don't see her, but I'm streaming, there's like a 90% chance that she's in my lap, just nodding off.
this for loop, we can, for example, print I. If I now run the code, you can see in the bottom, we have test, hello, and stuff. The content of the array. If you're used to Python, this should feel very familiar.
Don't say that!
Or in fact, if you know any programming language, this shouldn't be too
I don't!
difficult. On top of that, you can also use indexing.
Don't just skip over loops and arrays. Man.
If, for example, I only wanted to print the first value, I can go print the test array and then the index 0. Once again, if I run all of this, we get test, which is the first value inside of the array.
Okay, that is pretty self-explanatory. So I've learned from Lost that this is called a container, right? You made a level editor using Blender Python. And then for the level editor, for adding, was it a tile set or was it, no, it was 3D, right? But it's still like a tile set, you would say. So you use an array to store every type of like walls and stuff you can add in the level editor. Am I understanding this now?
So I hope...
Oh, and by the way, I would love for all of you more experienced people to join the Discord and just share your each page or your projects, so I can start learning a little bit more. I would love to see what the community has made.
All of this is reasonably straightforward. Now that we are moving things, we have to cover one super important concept. That is called delta time.
Yes, that's very important.
And Godot is actually already complaining that we are not using delta time. Let's have a look in Godot right now, actually. Here we are back in the editor, and if you look at the bottom, there we have a debugger that says 2. If you click on that, you get some weird thing. But then we have a tab that says errors with a 2. And
yeah, for game objects. So when you're using a level editor and you're spawning things in or drawing the level, all basically menu items and things you see in games, and you can go list through them, those are basically all arrays. Aha, so the man, I don't think I understand this. No, their label data and objects look like HTML. I used an array to build all objects in Blender one by one. Okay. So you had a finished level and you used the data of the objects, put it into array, and then put it in Blender like a catalog. I don't know.
in there, we have either errors or warnings. Right now, we have 2 warnings. So if you hover over both of them, we get a warning. And the warning for both is the same, that the parameter delta is never used in the function process. If this is intended, prefix it with an underscore delta.
Ah, okay.
Basically, what Godot doesn't like right now is we have 2 scripts. Let me open them. And in both of these scripts, we are using delta. We have one here, and we have another one here. Delta always comes with the process function. Godot inserts it automatically. The question then is, how can we use delta? And why does Godot complain if we don't use it? And well, for that, Godot actually adds a comment for this one. If I expand it a bit, we have called every frame. This applies to the process function. And delta is the elapsed time since the previous frame. And to understand what that means, we have to cover a bit of theory. Let me open the slides. When we are moving objects in the game, the speed of them is determined by how fast the game runs. I'll explain this in a bit more in just a second. But the main thing we have to account for right now is that our game can run at wildly different speeds. And when I talk about speeds, I talk about how many frames are being generated. So for example, our game might run on a really slow computer or on a really fast computer. And depending on where it runs, we might get different frame rates. And this can be a massive problem.
Yeah.
Let's do some examples.
That's why, for instance, if some other made Dark Souls mod that runs at 60 FPS and the collisions and the damage calculation was done per frame, and then all of a sudden, either you would one-shot a boss or, the dynamic of the damage modifiers totally changed because it was calculating per frame of the collision. So, yeah, don't do that.
Here is a table. And for all 3 rows, we want to move an object by 10 pixels per frame. This is actually what we have already done. If I jump back to Godot really quick, when we move the logo, we set position.x plus equal the speed. And the speed was 10 pixels. Which means on every frame of the game, we moved this position 10 pixels further to the right. Next column, we have frames per second. This is determined by your computer. For example, on my computer, I have a reasonably fast one. So my game would probably run a bit higher than 60 frames per second. That being said, another person might have a really, really, really good computer, and their game might run at 120 frames per second or even faster. The list can go on forever, and some person with a crazy computer might even have 1,000 frames or higher. On the other end, if you have a really slow computer, you might only get 30 frames per second or something lower. So this can also go up to 0, where you get no frames at all. This frame rate is really important because it influences how fast things are moving. For example, on this slowest possible computer, where we only get 30 frames per second, if we are moving by 10 pixels per frame, we are moving 300 pixels per second. That is the total movement, which is fine by itself, but if the frame rate changes, so if we get 60 frames or 120 frames, then we get different kinds of movement. We would get 600 or 1200 pixels per second. And that would be an enormous problem. Because now, depending on what computer the game is run on,
Thanks for the sub,
we
you
get
live.
different movement speeds. Just imagine you have the same game, something like Elden Ring, and on some computers it runs 4 times as fast than on others. And when I say it runs 4 times as fast, I mean the movement speed of a character is 4 times as fast as on another computer. The game would effectively be unplayable, so we do have to account for that. This inconsistency is also not limited to different computers. Since some scenes are more difficult to render than others, we might even have an inconsistent experience on the same computer. If you imagine any kind of video game, sometimes you have a small room with very few objects, and sometimes you have a giant area with a huge amount of stuff.
So my main problem when I was thinking about the game I want to make is I understand this when it comes to time and the different configurations in different PCs. What I don't understand is how you do that with resolution and the wildly varied resolutions and monitors and devices people can play your games on.
Obviously, the larger area is much more difficult to run. And you don't want to have different kinds of movement speed in the different scenes. So we have to account for that, and we want to avoid something like this, where the frame rate dips quite a bit over time. And while this by itself is fine and you see it fairly often, it should not influence the movement speed. So a lot of problems, how can we account for it? For that, we have delta time. And delta time literally just measures how long it took to create the current frame. For example, if our current frame rate is 60 frames per second, then delta time is 1 second divided by 60, roughly 17 milliseconds. This information we can use to keep a constant speed of any object in the game regardless of the frame rate. All we have to do is to multiply the movement with delta time. It's actually really easy to implement.
So yeah, I just googled, I forgot his name, Tom Francis, the maker of... Fuck, I shouldn't have started a sentence like that if I don't have the name of the games in my mind. The maker of that wizard game, Gunpoint. He made Gunpoint and a bunch of other games. And he basically started in games journalism, as far as I know, and then he's switched. He's basically a self-taught game dev. He started doing games in Game Maker, and later he started to do really simple, not simple, but, you know, very loose tutorials like, hey, let's just go make games in Game Maker. And when I did that, he had to do all this by hand. So he had to, delta was not, I think, is not a variable that you already have integrated into Game Maker to use. I might be talking out of my ass, but yeah. So this is very important, so that any movement you're doing on the pixel basis stays consistent with frame rate. Gunpoint, hit signature, tactical breach wizards. Thank you very much, Alex. If you can stay here and be my like fast fact checker, that would be great.
But to understand why this works, let me add another table. How frame rates influence the game when we have delta time. This table is somewhat similar compared to what we have seen earlier.
You're heavy.
We still have our speed with pixels per frame, and then we have the frame rate. Originally, what we have seen was this column, where we are getting different movements depending on the frame rate, which was really bad, so we have to account for that. And for that, we have added another column for delta time.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the frame rate, we are getting...
So basically, let me write this down in my notes. Oh, hi. Oi. So basically, every time you change something over time, divide by delta frame rates and all that. I forgot how to write English because German is occupying my brain. For those who don't know, I live in Germany and I'm struggling. Already I'm 10 years here, but now I have a German girlfriend and I'm struggling with learning German each day, something new. So it's kind of, and it does get better with time when I'm streaming. My English is coming back slowly, but I just forget words. And the preloader that you have of like what things you're gonna say, or like thoughts built, thoughts that form in your head, a lot of them are now forming in German, which I do not want. So I hope it's only gonna get better with time.
A different delta time. If our frame rate is 30 frames per second, we simply divide 1 second by 30, and delta time would be 0.033. If our frame rate is 60, we would divide 1 by 60, and we get 70 milliseconds, or something approximate to it. And if our frame rate is 120, we divide 1 by 120, and we get 0.08. These numbers we can then use as a multiplier for the frame rate, which is what happens in the final column. For example, for 120 frames, we are moving by 10 pixels per frame at 120 frames per second, and this we multiply with delta time, and the outcome is 10 pixels per second. A better way to visualize this is this 0.08 is literally 1 divided by 120. And if you multiply 120 with 1 over 120, both cancel each other out. So we are literally left with 10. And
Nice.
This applies to all the different frame rates. The higher the frame rate, the lower delta time. And since these two move proportionally, they always cancel each other out. And all that's left is the actual movement per second, which is exactly what we want. So with delta time accounted, the game is going to run at the same speed for any frame rate. Let's implement it. Back in Godot, all I have to do is...
Let me just reconstruct my thing that I did differently. Since when does it... Was speed a constant? Okay. And it's an integer. Then let's do it the same way he did, so it's not confusing. Ready? I have some more comments here, but he deleted the scale, right? Yeah. You 200. Oh, I think my girlfriend just got home from work. That's why Ruby's going crazy. Okay, he commented out the rotation. Do we want to leave it? I don't think we're gonna. This is all just an example, and later everything is gonna change anyway. So he changes. Yeah, we add an position is equal plus. Okay. Do we have everything back? No, what? Identify post not declared. That's probably above this. So we have to say variable pos is an integer, I think, and it equals position, right? Fine. No, it's a vector 2. So it's a vector 2. And we can say vector 2. Vector 2 dot 0, if I remember correctly, is 0, 0. No, man, you're doing fine. I mean, background Googler. You want that? Cannot find constant 0 on base vector. It's not 0, it's 0. Like this? Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm understanding this enough that when it fucks up, I can fix it on my own and I don't need to rewatch the thing. Okay, let's see. Okay, now the other thing we need to fix is, where was it? The process. This here should be pos. Now we're changing the variable and not the property. Oh! Invalid operands vector 2 and int in operator plus. We're adding pos x. Oh no, that was rotation, fuck. Leave that as it is. Here, position x. If logo pos x, then it's 0. Is that gonna work now? There we go. Nice. Okay. So let's go back where he is currently and keep watching.
And then multiply it by delta. The issue now is if I run all of this, this is going to be really, really slow. We basically have no movement left. The reason for it, the speed right now is 10 pixels per frame, and delta time is something like 0.000 and so on. As a consequence, the final result is going to be incredibly low. Whenever you use delta time, you want to have somewhat larger numbers. Let's go with 200. That is going to be a much better number. And there we go. Now we have roughly the same movement we had earlier. The if statement also still works, but now the important difference is that this movement always is the same regardless of the frame rate. Now in my case, I can't easily control the frame rate, so this is a bit difficult to visualize, but trust me, this is a very easy thing to implement and really important for a consistent game experience.
And very important,
On top of that, if you look at the bottom, the debugger is now a bit less unhappy. We only have one issue left. Fixing that one is going to be your exercise. I want you guys to use delta time in level.gd, more specifically inside of the process function of level.gd. Pause the video now and try to implement this one.
Okay, so yeah, the debugger is not happy about the level process. Probably because of the plus to the degrees, but that's degrees. But it's adding 2 degrees every frame, and that's why that needs to be by delta too. And now we're gonna have to increase it. Let's increase it to like 70, 80. Check that out. There we go. And the debugger is happy. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna take a 5-minute break just to say hi to my girlfriend when she gets home. You should always take the time to reach your loved ones when they get home. But we'll be right back. We're only halfway there. I'll be streaming till like 9 o'clock for sure. So yeah, stick around. I'm gonna put my be right back screen and you can watch some of my older content. See ya in like 5 to 10 minutes. I played it yesterday. I can't say I had a lot of fun, but I did have a fun. So, Hyper Light Drifter. This game looked amazing the first second I saw it when it was announced. Just like there are some other games now that I'm really looking forward to that look amazing. Just depending on the on the looks alone, I'm interested in them. And the soundtrack here is amazing as well. Let's start a new game. There's also a new game plus, a new game alternative, beat standard, unlocks new character. Wow. Okay. Replace the save? Sure. Good that I did that, because my save wouldn't be able to call Joy. Probably. Let's see the intro first. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut for this one. This is really cool. This game's got style, man. It reminds me of the old, like, rotoscoped animations from Dolphin Studios, like, or Delphine, that made, like, Flashback and Out of This World and stuff like that. Yeah, this looks sweet. Now it's gonna mess me up that the dodge is not on the same button as in Owl Boy. I think it'll be good. I've played just a little bit of this as well, so I don't fumble with the controls and stuff like that. I don't think you guys would appreciate it if I just like... Fuck! If I fumble with the controls. Well, there's a lot of secrets in this game. So I'm kind of like poking around, but they probably don't start so early on. Sometimes they do. Heyo! I'm back. So, I think we fixed everything that he wanted. Everything okay? Everything seems to be fine.
Back in Godot, I want to look at level.gd, and there we have process with delta. For this one, we have two things. We are updating the rotation, and then we are setting the position. We only need to use delta for one of them. When we are updating the rotation, this one we want to multiply with delta. And now remember, the rotation is going to be incredibly slow because delta is such a low number. Let's try actually. Now we have a very, very, very minor rotation. To make this more noticeable, let's change this to, I don't know, 60. That is more visible. And once again, this rotation is now frame rate independent.
Thank you, Alex.
We
Thank you for
not
waiting.
Need to apply delta for this if statement where we are updating the position.
Welcome.
Because this one is not a...
You are not 2 hours late because... Let me show you. You see this?
Change the movement.
You see
We are
this?
simply setting the position.
This is gonna be a long journey. So, if you look at it, you actually came in early. Nice to have you here.
Of the frame to x being 0. We are not continuously updating the movement. We are only doing this once. Because of that, we are not going to need delta time. In the future, we are also going to encounter quite a few functions that apply the movement with delta time automatically in build. So
no, I am not going to do it in one stretch. We're doing it in 3 hour increments. 3 hours of streaming. I only made about an hour in last time I was streaming, so this is all around 15-ish hours, but it's gonna take me at least 45 hours of stream time to get through it. With the stash, oh, I changed everything, and look, my hair is already pretty long too.
quite often you don't have to think about delta time at all. But it is a really important concept. You are going to see it fairly often, and it is super important to understand.
Wait.
You encounter quite a few functions that apply the movement with delta time automatically in build. So quite often you don't have to think about delta time at all. But it is a really important concept. You are going to see it fairly often, and it is
okay, we might want to try write that down too. Some movement functions already have a delta component built in.
Is super important to understand. So I hope this part was useful. A really important part for any game is player input. So let's talk about that.
Finally!
To capture any kind of input in Godot, there are 2 steps. Number 1, we have to create an input map. Basically what this one is doing is it allows you to capture different kinds of inputs and store them under a certain keyword. For example, we could get the left key on the keyboard and the A key and store them both under the left keyword inside of the input map.
That seems very
both of these keys inside of the game
practical.
Very easily.
And I suspect you can do then controller and keyboard input at the same time, which is cool.
Also account for the
and it's stored under the same like variable.
Mouse, joysticks, controllers, basically anything. Once we have all of that, we have to access the input. For that, Godot has an input object, and this is allowing us to capture various kinds of inputs. All combined, this should be quite easy to implement. Once again, here is the project we have created so far. And I want to get started by creating an input map. For that, we have to go to the top. There is project, and there we have project settings. If you look at the top, there we have an input map. And right now it's completely empty. For that, we have to create a new action first of all. This would be a category that can capture different kinds of inputs. For example, the one we could start with is left. Now we have one action called left. And this action should have a couple of keys associated. For that, I want to go all the way to the right. There's a plus symbol, and there I can add an event. And here we have keyboard keys, mouse buttons, joypad buttons, and joypad axis. Basically any kind of input. Now, the list for all of them gets quite long because, well, there are a lot of keys on the keyboard. So most of the time, you don't go through the list. Instead you click on listening for input, and then you press the button on the keyboard that you want. So in my case, I want to have the left button, so I click left. And that way, we find the key automatically. Then I can click on OK, and now we have the left physical button. This is the left key on the keyboard. We can also add a second key to this action, which I do again by clicking on plus, and the other key I want to add is the A button. So I just click on A and click on OK. With that, we have left and A, and they both represent left inside of the game.
Cool.
We are going to add quite a few more actions later on, but for now I want to keep it simple. So let's close the input map and see how we can use it. Which is bringing us to the second step. We have to access the input map, and this is going to happen with code. So let's...
Thank you very much, Alex, for dropping by. Yeah, I'm back on the regular streaming schedule 3 times a week at least, so... and on the weekends, I am going to be playing some games, you know, to have a little bit of downtime. And we're also going to be playing some games with more of a game dev eye, you know, and trying to figure out how they did some stuff and steal it, because some game devs and games figured out shit way better than I ever could if I start from scratch, you know. But yeah, nice to see you, and hope to see you in the future. Have a good day.
Say inside of the level, I want to open the code and make some updates to all of this. The code we are going to write has to be inside of the process function, because this one is going to run on every single frame of the game. If we try to run the code for the input in the ready function, it wouldn't work, because ready is only running for one frame when the game is starting.
Makes sense.
After that, it wouldn't do anything, so checking input in there would be pointless. Which means inside of process, I'm going to add a few more lines, and the most important line is going to be input. And you can see Godot is coloring this one already, which means this is a special keyword. To understand what it's doing, I think the best way to start this is to look at the documentation. And for that, Godot is amazing, because if you hold Control or Command, understand what it's doing, and the most important line is going to be input. And you can see Godot is coloring this one already, which means this is a special keyword.
Wow, I don't know why my YouTube audio just dropped in my headphones. I did not hear what he was talking about. Huh.
To understand what it's doing, this one already, which means this is a special keyword. To understand what it's doing, I think the best way to start this is to look at the documentation. And for that, Godot is amazing, because if you hold Control or Command and you click on Input, then Godot is opening the inbuilt documentation. And in there, you can read anything that you could possibly need about the input object. There's quite a bit.
Okay, so that's going to be very, very important to get familiar and to understand what the documentation actually says, because it is written in very dry programming language speak. So, you know, all these glossary terms like enumerations, signals, methods, properties, and all that, that's something I'm gonna need to intimately familiarize myself with, because if you know how to read this documentation, you basically know how to use every tool, because this is the explanation of every tool in the engine. But yeah, I guess that's gonna come in time. I have no idea how to do that now, but if I take a copious amount of notes like I've been doing so far, I kind of maybe forget sometimes, but let's write this down here, but I think that's so Control click, pull up documentation on any code element, I guess. But yeah, for now this, oh, there's online tutorials as well. Ooh, okay, so if I press this, it takes me to Godot Engine Asset Library. This is an asset library. This is a simple game where a character must move. Okay, so you can basically download a little tiny game that has inputs, or you know, the an example of what you need in the code. That's really cool. That's good to know.
So let me extend the entire thing. And there are all of the methods that you have on the input object. A really easy one, if I scroll down a bit, is action pressed. This one is simply checking if a certain action has been triggered or pressed on the keyboard.
Okay, and it says here what type of, I don't know the glossary terms, so what type of input it is. So a boolean is a true or false. Vector 2 is a coordinate with 2 numbers. Float is, yeah, that's really cool. Okay, and it already says what it needs in the brackets. Nice.
Let's use this one. For that, I'm going to stop using this in full screen mode and go back to the level. On input, I want to run a method. So I add dot and then is action. There we can choose just.
Okay, so a method is what's run. Huh. After the point?
Pressed, just released, or simply pressed. I want to go with is action pressed. And now we can look for the various actions. Godot has a couple of predefined ones, although all the way at the top we have the one that we created, which is called left. And now whenever we are pressing the button, or rather whenever the player is pressing the button, this is going to return a boolean that says either true or false. True if the button is pressed, and false if it isn't pressed.
Okay.
Which means we can simply print all of this, and we should see either true or false. Let me run the code, and now I get false because the key isn't pressed, But if I click on the left key or on A, we're getting true, which means we can register for the key press.
Okay, cool.
Cool, this one is working really well. In case you're wondering, if I return to input and look at the method we have just used, there we go, is action pressed. What's the difference between is action pressed and is action just pressed? For that, you can simply click on the method and then you get the entry inside of the documentation. The difference basically is that is action just pressed is only checking the action of pressing the button, which means if the player is pressing a button and holding the button down, we are only getting true once. Whereas is action pressed, we are checking the button being pressed down. So if the player holds down the button, we keep on getting some kind of output. The difference is somewhat subtle, but it can be quite important. If you play around with this, it should become fairly straightforward. And with that, we have the basics of keyboard input. All we have to do now is to expand all of this, and then we can move the player, at least in a very rudimentary sense. First of all, inside of project settings, I want to keep on working inside of the input map. First of all, I want to add a few new actions. Besides left, I also want to have right, I want to have up, and I want to have down. This is going to cover the keys to move the player. On top of that, I want to have a primary action. This would be the left mouse button or the spacebar to shoot a laser later on, although there's still quite a bit of ground to cover before we reach that stage. But first of all, we have to add a few keys to all of these actions. And I would recommend that you are doing this yourself, but I'm going to add a proper exercise later. Although this shouldn't be too hard, so let's just go through it. For the right action, I want to press right on the keyboard, or I want to press D on the keyboard. Next up, for up, I want to press up on the keyboard, click on OK, or I want to press W on the keyboard and click OK. For down, I want to press down on the keyboard and I want to press S on the keyboard. With that, we can move around. Next up, we need primary action. This one is triggered either by the spacebar. This one is easy to capture. All I have to do is press space and there we go. We have the spacebar. Capturing the mouse buttons is a tiny bit more difficult because I couldn't just click in there. Oh well, I actually can, but I didn't know how to do that. So instead of doing that, you could simply look at mouse buttons, and there's left mouse button, right mouse button, middle mouse button, and so on. I want to get the left mouse button. So I click on OK, and there we go. Now we have a ton of keys that we can work with. Now back in the code, let me move back to the editor. I don't want to move this sprite that we have created earlier. Instead, I want to move the player. And for that, I want to clean things up a bit. I don't need the laser image anymore, so I'm going to get rid of this. And this sprite 2D for the grenade, we can also get rid of. That way, we are left only with the player image. On top of that, inside of the level, I want to attach an instance of this player. So with level selected, I'm going to click on the chain symbol and then attach the player. And let's just move him somewhere there, so we see what's going on. Now with that, I want to give the player a script. And the script is going to go on the player node 2D, not on the image itself. The reason for that is later on, this node is going to get a whole bunch more children, and we want to move all of them together. For that,
Wait. Did it say?
So we see what's going on. Now with that, I want to give the player a script, and the script is going to go on the player node 2D, not on the image itself. The reason for that is later on, this node is going to get a whole bunch more children, and we want to move all of them together.
Yeah.
For that, we have to move only the parent node, and since we apply the same transform to all of the children, we are moving all of them if we move the parent, which means the player is going to get a script. Once again, we get the dialog to create a new script, and the one thing I should have mentioned earlier, when you click on template, you either have default, and this one includes the ready function and process, whereas if you have empty, it doesn't include anything except the extend statement for the inheritance. I am going to go with empty because I like to start clean, but you can choose whatever you want. On top of that, for the path, I want to save the script, so player.gd, in the same folder where I have the scene for the player, which I already have. So I can click on Open and Create. There we go. Now the player has a script. To check for input,
I'm
once
with you
again,
so far.
we will need the process function. And first of all, in there, I want to get the input. And this I can do in a couple of different ways. Although there's one method that is the most succinct and the easiest to use. Let's have a look at input, because in there, if I scroll all the way up, we have a whole bunch of methods that we can use. And let me extend this window a bit so we can see things better. The method that is going to be most useful for us is called getVector. If I click on that, we get a bit more detail. This method is designed for top-down movement. Basically, what it wants is 4 different actions. One for negative x, or left, then positive x, so right. After that, negative y and positive y.
Okay,
which
cool.
would be
This
up
is more
and down.
streamlined than
We could also
doing
add
every
a
button.
dead zone, but we don't need to. So I'm going to ignore it. Once we have these 4
That zone is probably very important for the analog stick on controllers, right?
actions, Godot is going to return a vector. And this vector is going to give us the movement. For example, if the user only pressed the negative x action, we will get a vector that points at -1 and 0. So we are just going to the left, no up or down. If you just read these things on your own, I think especially at this stage, this is probably a bit confusing. And when you
Yeah.
get started with coding, reading documentation can be a bit difficult. But if you have a bit of practice, all of this should become quite easy to understand. But, well, it does take some time to get used to it. Anyway though, I want to minimize this window and work inside of the player. To get the input, I first of all want to create a new variable. Let's call it var direction. And this direction I get with input and then dot get underscore vector. That is the method we just looked at. This one, and now we have to go through the different actions for the 4 directions. We have to start with negative x, which is a fancy way of saying left. Then we need positive x, which is just right. Then we need negative y, which is up. And finally, we needed positive y, which is down. Once we have all of those, Godot starts.
So yeah, y is negative y up. It's because the coordinate system has the y-axis flipped. Flipped if you think in CAD terms, but in game dev, this is pretty standard. Okay, let's put it like this. Put it in quotations.
Complaining, and we are getting a vector. To make sure this is working, let's print what we are actually getting from direction. And before I run all of this inside of the level, I want to comment out the print statement. So we only see the output for the direction, and it's not going to get too confusing. Let's
Wait. What did you do?
we needed positive y, which is down. Once we have all of those, Godot stops complaining, and we are getting a vector. To make sure this is working, let's print what we are actually getting from direction. And before I run all of this inside of the level, I want to comment out the print statement. So,
Aha, in the level. Okay, I don't think I actually did that. Yeah, I didn't. But let me comment that thing out as well.
we only see the output for the direction, and it's not going to get too confusing. Let's run all of this. And now by default, we get 0 and 0 because I'm not pressing anything. However, if I press the left key or I press A, then we get -1 because this is now telling the game that we want to move in the left direction. I can also press up or down or right or 2 keys combined. Then we get a slightly less pretty vector, but it certainly works. The same would also work with WASD. We get pretty much the same output. This is looking really good. Which means with all of that, we can get the input and then we just have to use it to move the player. To actually move the player then, we have to target the position. And once again, I think for this, it's easiest to have the inspector open, because what we ultimately want to change is the position of the node 2D. And this we can target with the position, which by itself is going to be a vector. All we have to do is position plus equal the direction and then times some kind of speed. Let's say 200. On top of that, what I covered in the last part, do not forget delta whenever you move anything continuously. Now, once we have all of that, I can run the code again, and now we can move the player around. It's quite slow, but it definitely works, so I am quite happy with that. It might be a good idea to increase the speed to, let's say, 500, and now we can move much faster. This is feeling better. But this would be the basics of movement. Later on, we are going to change that to account for physics, but for now, this is working just fine. That being said, I do want to add one more thing though, because right now, we are just
jittery
able to
now.
move. The player wouldn't have any...
Look at this. I don't know if you can tell, maybe the refresh rate of 30 frames in OBS doesn't actually pick that up, but it's very, very jittery. I don't know. We'll see.
mechanic. For that, I want to add a bit more code. Let's call it the laser shooting input. I want to check if the player is pressing the primary input. I need an if statement, and this is going to look very similar compared to what we have done inside of this print statement. I want to check the input and then is action pressed, which means inside of the player, I want to get the input and then is action. For this one, you could use either is action just pressed or is action pressed. Later on, we are going to have a timer to delay the laser shooting anyway, so the difference here is negligible. But the action I'm looking for is primary action. If that is the case, for now, I simply want to print, let's say, shoot laser. And now I can run the game again. Now, if I click with my mouse button, I get shoot laser, or if I press space, we're also getting shoot laser. So this is working just fine. And that is covering all of the basics of keyboard input. All we have to do now is do an exercise, and then we are done. I want you guys to create another action in the input map and call it secondary action. The associated keys are control, left control to be more specific, but it doesn't really matter, and also the right mouse button. If that action is triggered, print shoot grenade, and all of the code should be inside of the player right below the laser. Pause the video now and try to figure this one out.
Okay, this shouldn't be that hard. So we go back into the project settings and the input map. We call that secondary action, and we add O, and we add the right mouse button to it. Close it. Here it said print laser. And now you have single window mode. Ah, wait. No, I haven't. That's what I was... Yeah, because I'm doing a window capture, so is that gonna help show everything? Oh, that's amazing, man. Yes, exactly. Is that gonna fix it? Let me check. What is it? Single window mode. Editor settings. Single window mode. On. Save and restart. Oh, that's gonna be great if that works. Oh, thank you, Ironic, so much. Come on. Hello? Godot? There we go. it's starting to get dark here, so I'm gonna have to check on my chroma key every now and then. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now if I do project settings... Oh, you can see it! Okay, fucking excellent. Oh man, thank you very much. Okay, cool, cool, cool. What's this here now? Spectre? What's this? Ah, this is like a back and forth. I didn't notice that before. So we have print shooting laser, if that's the case. Thank you very much. And now we're gonna have, what did he say? Shoot grenade. Shoot grenade. So if input is input with a big I, be careful with that. Is action just pressed a secondary action? Print grenade. There we go. And that should be it. Let's see. Is the debug now a separate window as well or not? Oh, it is, still is. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, we're moving. Shooting laser with space. Shooting laser with left mouse button. Right mouse button should shoot the grenade. And control should shoot the grenade. Nice. That's working. Okay. So far so good. We can close the bed. We can close the input. And we can close the logo. I'm using that much. Let's keep everything nice and... Oh, so you can jump... Okay, you can jump from function to function inside a script too. That's gonna be... It's gonna come pretty handy with huge scripts, I guess. Okay, let's keep going.
First of all, I have to update the input map. This I'm doing inside of project, input map.
Okay, he's gonna go through it now
action.
double, so,
I
but
call
you
this
know.
one secondary action. Now that I have the action, I have to add a couple of keys. I want to add control, so I just click control on the keyboard. Besides that, I'm going to click on the plus again, and I can click left mouse button in the field and then select right mouse button. This is the one we're looking for. That is going to update the input map, so now I can close it. After that, I can reopen the player code, and now we need to do something that is pretty similar to this. I want to add an if statement, and if input is action pressed, I am looking for the secondary action. If that is the case, I want to print shoot grenade. The specifics of what I print really don't matter. We're going to change this later on quite a bit anyway, but for now, this should be all we need. Let's try. And if I right click, we get shoot grenade. If I press on control, we also get shoot grenade. If I press space, we still get shoot laser, and we can also still move around. So all of this is coming together quite nicely. Perfect. Before we continue, I want to cover some more minor topics. Specifically, I want to talk more on nodes. Even more specifically, I want to talk about how to interact with nodes via code. We have already seen some of that. To bring up an earlier slide, you can target nodes in two ways, either with getNode or with a $sign. The $node one is the much better one because it's just more concise. We are going to explore this further, specifically how to target different nodes that are a bit more nested. So if a node has more parent nodes or more children nodes, how can we target various nodes in there? I think that's a really important thing to understand.
Okay.
What you can also do is you can give a node unique names. Especially for a complex scene, this can be incredibly useful. Also very easy to implement, so quite a useful thing. On top of that, what I really want to emphasize is that once you capture a node inside of your code, you can access the properties and the methods of this node. You basically treat a node like a class that has properties and methods, and you can work with them, because that's basically what's happening. Here we are back in the lab.
So the way he said it, I don't understand what's the difference between a node and a class. Is node just a template for a predefined like list of classes in Godot, but you can make your own, I guess.
Level, and let's see what we already have in terms of working with the nodes inside of the code. So if I look at the level, I can open the code in there, and we can see we have already a couple of interactions. Most importantly, we are getting the logo node, the sprite we have created earlier, and we are changing the rotation and the position. Notice here that we are influencing and measuring some of the inbuilt properties, like position, and we are changing a custom attribute that we have added, like pos. So if I look inside of logo, we have pos, something we created ourselves.
And also I'm starting to think that because I'm not familiar with all the properties of a node, that I should have a named variable should have var in its name, so that I know, because just by looking at the code, I have no idea that pos is a custom-made variable. Although it seems that it is a different color. Is there a way to change the color so it's more vibrant? Settings. Is that a theme? I don't think that's a theme thing. Or am I crazy? Go back to the logo. This is a different color. Yeah, those two are two different colors. It's just very, very hard to tell. For me, at least. I might be blind. So let's see. There must be a way to change this. Okay, I might look into this off stream going forward. Oh, there we go. Keyword color, string color. I don't see this color in string. Variable name is not a string. I mean, technically it is, but okay, yeah, I'm gonna maybe change this on my own, but yeah, that's good to know that you can.
We could do the same thing with the player, although for this part, we don't really need it. Now,
what do we need? Don't need?
Like position, and we are changing a custom attribute that we have added, like pos. So if I look inside of logo, we have pos, something we created ourselves, and we have the position. This is part of the node itself. We could do the same thing with the player, although for this part, we don't really need it. Now, what I first of all want to cover is how to work a bit more with different node paths. For example, let me add a few more nodes. So with the level node selected, I press Ctrl A, or I could also click on the plus symbol, and I want to add another sprite 2D. However, with this sprite 2D selected, I want to click on Ctrl D to duplicate it, and then set the second sprite 2D as the child of this sprite 2D. So we have another sprite 2D with another child. And this process I'm going to do a few more times That way, we have sprite2d4 as a child of a couple of other nodes. This isn't the most useful setup, but for the purposes of this video, it's going to be quite useful. Because let's say you wanted to target this sprite2d4, and let me rename it to target, so it's a bit easier to understand what's going on. Let me just drag it somewhere down there. And
yeah, it's going to
there
have
we can
the
see
full
we have
path.
a longer path.
Yeah.
We have sprite2d. That is the first sprite2d, the first child of the level node, because right now the code is for the level. Inside of this sprite2d, we have another sprite2d. This would be sprite2d2. That's this one. Then we have another sprite2d, sprite2d3, this one. And finally, we have the target, the final node. If your scene becomes more complex and you have more nested nodes, this is the kind of thing you will see quite often. But it's still not too bad, and for example, what you could do right now is simply print the node, and let's not do this in the process node, and instead put all of that inside of the ready function. That way we don't clutter the output. If I now run this, we get inside of the output target and then a sprite2d somewhere with a unique ID. Meaning all of this is working just fine. Now, if you feel like this is becoming too hard to read, which it might actually become, you can give this target node a unique name. To give it one, you have to right click on it and then access as a unique name. If I click on that, we have a percentage sign on the right side of it.
Oh, okay,
what this
cool.
one means, if I now delete this path and drag the target node again in there, we are now getting a percentage sign and then the target. Although the result is going to be the same. We are still getting the target, which is a sprite2d, with some unique ID. Basically what this one is doing is it gives this target a unique name that you can access anywhere inside of the scene. For example, if I wanted to work inside of the logo, where we are simply moving a sprite right now, I could also target the same node. I can simply, let's say, I want to have the percentage sign, then the target.
Okay, so it's
that
like
would
a
give
global.
us the entire node. And on that, I could, for example, get the position. If I spell this correctly, this would also help a lot. And now, if I run all of this again, we are getting a position, which is 0 and 0. With this kind of setup, it's much easier to work in larger scenes.
I know,
Although
it's not global because this is all still in the level node. I don't think you can call it with just percentage sign target in another scene, right?
overuse it. If you add this kind of thing to every single node, the system kind of becomes pointless. So use this sparingly, but in certain situations, this can be incredibly useful. That being said, in this case, this is not useful at all. Because of that, I want to delete all of the stuff we have just created. So I'm going to delete all of these nodes and get rid of the print statement inside of logo GD and level GD, because the target node doesn't exist anymore. The last thing I want to cover is what if you have a child node like this logo2d with a script and you want to access something inside of the parent, in this case, the level. For example, right now inside of our level, we have a test array with a couple of entries.
Oh, I didn't do that. I should. Yeah, let's just watch.
I want to access this from inside of the logo, which has this script attached to it. That you can also do quite easily. All you have to do is, well, you basically just have to drag the node into the code and then you see what's going to happen. We get a double dot. This is the sign in Godot to get the parent node. And on that, we can target certain things. In this case, inside of level GD, we have a test array. This is just a property of this node, so I can get test array. All of this I want to print so we can actually see it. Also, let me get rid of any other print statement. For example, here we have test array 0 that we are printing, which would be confusing right now. Inside of the player, we are only printing if we are shooting the laser or the grenade, so those are fine. Now, if I run the code again, we get the test array inside of the output, and this is because we are getting the parent node with the property. On top of that, what you can also do is you can give this node a custom function and call it from any of the children or the parents. Something we haven't done yet actually. So let's create a custom function. So far, we only use the inbuilt ones, but you can totally create your own function. Simply type func and then type a custom name. For example, test function. Then you need the parentheses. In there you could add parameters, although in this case I don't have any. And I simply want to print, this is a test function. This function I now want to call from inside of logo.gd. I want to get the parent node, and for this one I need quotation marks and then dot dot. The same thing we have done up here. The quotation marks you will need when you use the dot dots. If I remove them, we would get some weird output. So when you use a parent node...
Oh, wow, Jake, thanks for the raid. Welcome.
Although other than that, we can simply call the test function. And since we now want to call the function, don't forget the parentheses.
We're learning Godot.
With that, I can run all of this, and there we get, this is a test function. Looks pretty good.
Ah, okay, so with that, I think we can basically take a huge chunk. Well, we can take a huge chunk of code and declare it as a function. And then just call it in another node. That's very, very useful. Thank you very much for the raid. Yeah, I'm just for all of you new people here, just so you know, I'm a total noob when it comes to game dev or programming or learning languages or anything. I did fool around a little bit with Game Maker like 3-4 years ago, and all of that just evaporated from my brain. And my professional background is in technical drawing and CAD stuff. So yes, I know, but I'm 37, just starting out chasing my dreams. So and the reason why I'm streaming it is to combat procrastination for the most part, to be focused on the thing that I'm doing, and to have a rigorous schedule when I'm doing it and set some time aside for it. Because I have noticed before, when I was streaming regularly and playing games, I was pretty consistent with my schedule, which when I do, for other things, and it's not streaming and people are not potentially watching and I'm not on my shit, just gets, devastated at some point. How are you, man? Are you a dev streamer, or, are you into making games as well?
Now inside of the level, we could use this to do basically anything inside of the script. For example, we could change the position, we could change...
Cool. When you're saying at the moment, is like you're learning, or you have experience in it before, or in other stuff?
Change the rotation, we could change the test array, whatever we want to. To print, so we can actually see it. Also,
what did I do? Oh no, I switched to...
The system kind of becomes to drag the node.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I see a lot of game devs here kind of dabbling in, or trying to switch to game dev. I have had some of come in chat. That's really nice to see. Yeah, and I bet it's a much more natural transition regarding that.
Into the code, get test array. Now, if
okay, we did see that.
And call it from any of the children or the parents. Test function,
text
have
function.
any,
yeah.
And I simply want to print, this is a test function. This function I now want to call from inside of logo.gd. I want to get the parent node, And for this one, I need quotation marks and then dot dot. The same thing we have done up here.
What happens if you want to call a parent of your parent of your parent? Then you just go dot 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 or what?
The quotation marks you will need when you use the dot dots. If I remove them, we would get some weird output. So when you use a parent node, you would need the quotation marks. Although other than that, we can simply call the test function. And since we now want to call it...
Oh, and by the way, guys, this video from Clear Code seems really well made. It's an introductory course that's 11.5 hours, and there's a part 2 that's 3 more hours. Yeah, he covers signals later on. I think that's basically how far I've got into, or I just skipped and looked into everything, yeah. But this seems like a really good tutorial because he explains something and then he gives you a task to do yourself, pause the video, and then he goes through that as well. So you're not just watching, you know. I know I've watched a lot of videos in preparation for this and like what engine to use and blah blah blah, but I'm really adamant not to be stuck into tutorial hell. That's why I want to go just through this one, which seems pretty comprehensive and goes through basically all the basic concepts, and is focused on a top-down game, which I want to do, and then immediately go and start doing my... Yes, that's why what everybody says. I just want to get down the basics of like moving stuff and calling, you know, spawning stuff in, and I'm immediately going to start doing my own thing off stream. And then as I learn, I'm going to switch between. That was kind of my idea, because I'm streaming 3 times a week now, and I'm so passionate about all this that it's too long for me to just wait and do my own stuff on the side. So maybe this stream not, but the next stream we're gonna go through like spawning stuff in and maybe physics signals and things like that, and then I can start doing my stuff. Oh, cool. I don't know, you seem like you have your own community, but I would really like if you join the Discord and put up some links up there. I would like to see you. I would love to see your work. Let me just... I'm gonna put the Discord link, invite link inside. Although it should be down on the... down in Twitch chat, in Twitch like description type thing. But yeah, there you go.
Function, don't forget the parentheses at the end. With that, I can run all of this, and there we get, this is a test function. Looks pretty good. And now inside of the level, we could use this to do basically anything inside of the script. But
do you have your own like itch.io page and things you're doing? Maybe some projects and games you made?
For example, we could change the position, we could change the rotation, we could change the test array, whatever we want to do. And this is something really important that you have to understand.
Okay, cool. I'll check. Is it the same name as... Let's see. Check blade. Is that you? Retro Bright. I think I've watched some of it. Retro Bright? channel. There we go. There we go. Oh yeah, and it's you have an itch.io page. Cool. I'll be sure to check it out. Cool. Always looking for more input, you know? It's also metal sorry on plastic. Oh yeah, that's why so many NES and all the consoles popped out. Okay. Yeah, it's a really cool name, but yeah, it can mess up your SEO if I did not know that that was the name for it.
One of the most important aspects of Godot, if you want to master it, is to make nodes communicate with each other. What we have done so far is we have made nodes work together in the same scene. Although later on, we will also work across multiple scenes. There are quite a few tools to make all of this work, but I really want to emphasize that making nodes communicate with each other is a fundamental part of Godot, and you have to understand how this works. I suppose for now this isn't too difficult, but later on we're going to expand on this system quite a bit. So definitely play around with this and make sure you can access different nodes.
So when you say developing a level editor in Blender, is that a level editor so you can make the game and levels yourself, or making a level editor so players can make levels? That seems like two very different beasts, you know? And since it's in Blender, I suspect it's 3D, right? It's not. So players can make levels. Okay, yeah, cool. I really like that idea because then, you know, you have infinite amounts of fun. Yeah, very cool. I kind of get the idea of how to do it with you know, tile sets and having like a grid of a sprite grid. Make a level importer. Okay. Cool.
Nodes and change their properties from anywhere inside of a scene. At this point, you should be able to do just that. For this section, we are going to have a slightly different exercise. It's much more open-ended. I want you guys to play around with the nodes and try to change and update other nodes. Basically, make sure that you understand the node paths and how you can use them to access properties and methods on other nodes. There isn't really a specific goal with all of this. Just play around and see what you can change, what you can add.
Yeah, so my next stream is scheduled on Saturday, and I'm definitely gonna try and play around with stuff on a project of my own. So I can show the idea that I had going in was for a simple game. You know how all these mobile games have you running on a highway or like a road, and you're basically just moving left or right? So if you do a 2D thing, why am I waiting? So if you make it 2D, then basically if something's moving towards you, it's just scaling in perspective, right? So I was thinking about making a game that is a skydiver, falling and things are coming towards you. And how I thought about going about it is taking an invisible, smaller screen size, basically, of your player area size, spawning objects inside of them with a very small scale, having the scale center be in the middle of the screen, and then just increase the scale, and you would have the feeling of objects, you know, whizzing past you, or, you know, hovering at a certain scale underneath you. And then maybe skewing the sprites a little bit as they pass you, but that would be pretty flat. So I was thinking maybe using 3D models for that. You know, like drones, helicopters, things like that. and then basically you have you can move freely wherever you want, and you maybe have guns, and you shoot things as they pass you by, and there would be like obstacles and things like that. I think that's pretty doable with a very limited understanding of how the engine works. Like, the animations are not going to be great. Art is not my focus right now. But I was thinking what would be really cool for a simple idea like this is if I make a rotoscoped animation, I would like do a video of myself flying with the camera. And maybe, as your character is falling down, a few bullets whiz past him from above, and then the camera goes behind his shoulder and he turns around, and now basically it's the same type of game, but it's you're not moving, it's more like a shooting gallery type thing, and the helicopters are flying above you and paratroopers are like falling. So it's the same scale perspective type thing, but it's now in reverse. So yeah, I don't know, something like that. I think that is something I can try and tackle, or at least start doing on the side as I'm doing this tutorial. So yeah, this is gonna be my next thing that I'm gonna try and then do.
Access, what properties you can work with, it's really important to understand. And once you understand all of that, we can work with the actual character movement. So in the next part, we will talk about physics. Let's talk about one of the most important parts so far, and that is physics. This is incredibly important for any kind of movement. To illustrate why, I want to cover some problems we have right now. So far, we are currently just moving images, which is fine, but also limited, because an image cannot collide or slide along a surface. Essentially, they don't have any physical properties, which would be a massive issue for a game. To fix that, we have to use collision bodies and physics bodies. Those are Godot nodes that can work with all of that. And the best way to approach all of that is to look at this straight in Godot. Here we are.
I think the problem is also we are using pixels to move, right? And we want to use... No, you always have to use pixels, right? But what if you change... What if a person changes... That's my main problem that I don't understand, guys. Maybe you can help me with this. Is like, I understand that in Godot you have delta time, which accounts for different frame rates and different frame rates, so that everything happens at the same time, no matter the frame rate. But how do you account for that in resolution if you're moving in pixels? That doesn't make sense for me. Like, if a person is playing, the whole playing field changes, right? So if you're moving 10 pixels to the right, it's going to be a much faster movement speed on a lower resolution. So how do you account for all the different resolutions and different devices that people are playing your game on? I know there's scaling, which basically makes time to everything, right? Or times whatever. But that's kind of a weird thing that I cannot wrap my mind around right now, is like, how does that work?
Back in the editor, and I want to create a few more nodes. Let's get rid of Sprite 2D, and here we can see all of the nodes. In a very broad sense, you have 4 different types of nodes. You have the blue ones.
Oh, and that's what I was thinking with the skydiving game, right? Because every sprite you have starts very small and then grows bigger. It cannot be pixel art, because scaling pixel art looks really, really shitty, right? So the best thing, if using 2D, would be vector graphics, which you can scale infinitely. Or I was thinking maybe even using 3D models, because when they zip past you, you kind of do see the side and you do see other things, right? Yeah, I don't know.
Those are nodes for a 2D game. Then you have control nodes. Those are nodes for the layout. We'll cover those to some extent later. But this is quite large.
For the layout?
Those are nodes for the layout. We'll cover those to some extent later. But this is quite a large topic, so this is going to be a separate video. We also have 3D nodes, and then we have a lot of general nodes. For example, there's a timer. We cover that quite soon, actually. For now, I want to work inside of Node 2D because we're making a 2D game. In there, we have lots more nodes, but at the top, we have Collision Object 2D. If I expand that, we get Physics Body 2D, and we get an Area 2D node. We can also expand Physics Body 2D, and there we have a Static Body 2D, a Character Body 2D, and a Rigid Body 2D. We can expand things a bit more, but we don't need to. These 4 nodes are incredibly important, so I want to talk about them in quite some detail. There are 2 major parts for every one of these nodes that you have to be aware of. Number 1 is what they do, and number 2 is how you would move them. Because now that we are working with physics, the movement gets a bit different. Most of the work is done by Godot, so we're not going to do anything complicated. The easiest node that we can talk about is Area 2D. This is just an area that can check if another body has entered. This area you can also move by changing the position, which is quite easily done. A good example for this one would be if the player is entering a house. The house would be an Area 2D, and this Area 2D can check if a body has entered. Besides that, when we are creating the lasers later on, those will also have areas attached to them. And those areas are going to check if the laser is colliding with an enemy or a wall or an obstacle or something like that. Next up...
Wait, but why would a laser or another object need an Area 2D? Can it just check the collision of it, the collision body against another collision body? Yeah, I don't know.
We have a Static Body 2D. The name gives you a pretty good idea of what this one is doing. It's a static body that is colliding with other bodies. As a consequence, there's no movement for this one. I guess in theory you could be moving it, but you're not supposed to. Examples for this one would be literally any static object in the game. Any kind of wall, any kind of obstacles, and what we've already created, the bat, is going to be a Static Body 2D. Which means later on, other bodies can collide with them, but they cannot move themselves. They are the easiest kind of collidable body we have. Next up, we have a Rigid Body 2D. This is a body that moves purely via physical forces. Think of it like a cannonball. If you want to move them, all you have to do is set a velocity when you create them, and then the body is going to move on its own. We are not going to use this very much, but when we are going to create the grenade later on, we are going to use a Rigid Body 2D. Because for the grenade, all we have to do is set a velocity, and then it's going to move on its own. Finally, the most important body is Character Body 2D. This is a moving body controlled by code, and you are moving this via inbuilt methods. There are a couple depending on what kind of collision you want. I'll cover this in just a bit. But essentially any...
So I think I get it. I think he's using Area 2D for the lasers because lasers are not going to be affected by physics. They're going to have a constant movement, I guess. I don't know.
Entity controlled by code is going to be a Character Body 2D. This includes the player and all of the enemies. And when I say an entity controlled by code, I mean some complex movement. For example, the player has a complex movement of a direction that we get via input, and then a certain kind of speed. The enemies would also have some slightly more complex movement. Although for now, I covered a whole bunch of theory, so let's return to the editor and let's do something more practical. Back in Godot, I want to create a couple of physics bodies. And let's start with the easiest one. I want to update the bat. Because right now we have a Node 2D as the parent, and then we have 3 sprites attached. To update this, I want to change the parent node. So this Node 2D, I want to turn into a Static Body 2D. For that, I have to right click on it, and there we have Change Type.
Oh, okay, so you can do it.
Right now we have a Node 2D. This is not what I want. Instead, I want to go to Node 2D, Collision Object, and Physics Body 2D, and there we have a Static Body 2D. Alternatively, you could also simply type in Static Body 2D and you would get the same result. So now we get a Static Body 2D. You can see that the icon has changed, but so far not much has happened. The other thing we got is a warning symbol, which is saying that this node has no shape, so it cannot collide or interact with other objects. Consider adding a collision shape 2D or
Bravo.
collision polygon 2D as a child to define its shape. What that means is that whenever you have any
This
physics
is Ruby.
body, you have to also attach a shape, because right now this
Say hi
collision
to
body
chat.
doesn't know what its actual body is. Or more specifically, it doesn't know what the shape of its body is. To fix that, we need to add another node, which means I click on the plus, and what we need is a collision shape 2D
shape.
or a collision
Okay.
polygon 2D. A collision shape 2D is giving you predefined shapes, whereas a collision polygon 2D allows you to create more flexible arrangements. For now, though, since the bat is a really easy shape, I want to have a collision shape 2D. If I now click on enter, we create another child, which is a collision shape 2D. Although now we're getting another warning, which is saying that a shape must be provided for collision shape 2D to function. To add this shape, we have to look at the right. There, inside of the inspector, we have a shape property. Right now it says empty, but if I click on it, we can select a set of shapes. The one I want to look at is a new rectangle shape 2D. If I click on that, we get a small blue area. On top of that, if you look at our nodes, we don't have an error anymore, which is perfect. What you now have to understand is that this blue area here that we can move around is the shape of this static body, which I called bad right now. To make all of that work properly, I want to select it again and scale it up so that it fits the entire physical shape of the bad, which right now is simply the image. You can simply drag the red dots. Also, what you can do, if you select one dot and hold Alt, you are scaling it on either axis. So vertical or horizontal is fine. Basically, what you want to end up with is some kind of shape that covers what you want to have as the actual physical body. Something like this looks pretty good. Now I want to save the scene, and if I look at the level again, in here we don't have the bed right now. So with the level selected, I want to click on the chain symbol to add a child scene and add the bed. And let's move it here-ish. You can still see we have the blue outline. In the game though, this is not going to be visible. This blue area is purely for debugging purposes, so you know what the actual collision shape is.
That's good.
That being said though, if I run the game again, I can move the player, but we have no collision. The reason for that is that the bat has a collision shape, but the player is just an image, and images cannot collide. So we have to update the player, and then we have an actual collision. Which means, once again, we have to update a node. In this case, the player is also a node 2D, but this is not what I want anymore. So I right-click on it, and I want to change the type. I don't want a node 2D, instead I want to have a character body 2D. With that, once again, we get a different symbol and a warning icon. This body has no shape. To fix that, I want to add another node, which is going to be a collision shape 2D. I have this one in my recent tab. I can click on create. Now we get another warning that there's no shape for this body. And for that, we have to look on the right where we can add a shape. Now for this one, the shape is getting a bit more complicated because the player itself doesn't have a regular shape. Although we can simplify things a bit. If you look at the player and squint a bit, you get more or less a round shape.
Squint
which
a bit.
is what I want to go
A
with.
lot.
Which means for the shape, I want to have a circle shape 2D. This is now giving me a circle, and this circle I want to expand a bit to something like this. And on top of that, I want to get the player image and move it so it's
So he keeps
roughly
it
in the middle.
centered.
I would
Okay.
recommend to always keep the collision shape around the center. So right now, this character body has a center around the position 0 and 0. And this 0 and 0 I don't want to change. So I keep the collision shape around this position and then move the player to align with it. With that, we have a collision shape. This sort of setup, where you have a character body 2D, an image, and then a collision shape, is incredibly common in Godot. Basically, any kind of game for any scene is starting with something like that. That way you get collisions, you get movement, and you can see what's going on via the image. And if you don't have movement, like for the bat, you would have a static body 2D, then an image or multiple images, and then another collision shape. So this kind of setup is something you really have to understand. That being said, right now, if I run the code again, I still don't get any kind of collision. So something still isn't working.
They should be on different layers.
The reason why that is, if I look at the player and open the code, we get one problem. And this is we are extending a node 2D.
Which is false.
This is because earlier on, we created a node 2D and attached all of the code. But we changed the node. Now we don't have a node 2D anymore. Instead, we have a character body 2D. So we don't want to extend a node 2D. We want to extend a character body 2D. Now that we have that, I can run the code again, and we still don't get a collision. That is because we are right now updating the position, which is not how you are supposed to use a character body 2D. As a consequence, let me get rid of this position. Also, I want to extend the code window so we can see a bit better what's going on. To update a character body 2D, you want to use a specific method that is called move and slide. You don't have to add any kind of argument. This one works by itself. However, what you also have to do is to update a velocity. This velocity is a property of a character body 2D. You always have it. But once you overwrite it, move and slide is picking it up to move the body. So in our case, we want to set the velocity, which is going to be a vector 2D, to the direction and then multiply it with some kind of speed. Let's say for now, I want to go with 500. Now if I run the game again, we are getting a collision. And this is feeling much better. Let's talk about this setup a bit.
Why did he use direction here? Aha, that's a variable. Yeah, okay.
More. And the best way to think about it is to look at all of this.
Yeah, I need to make a distinction of this slightly like colored text compared to white text, because I always forget that there's a difference between integrated properties and like self-declared variables
Inside of the documentation. For that, I am going to
Oh, Disco! You know, I've been thinking about you a lot. First of all, congratulations on the job. But I was thinking about you a lot because I'm getting into game dev, and I was like, okay, I know somebody who can do some UI stuff for me. How you been? How's it going?
Command and click on character body 2D. If I do that, I get the documentation for a character body 2D. And in there, you have a lot of information. I would recommend you...
Oh, yes, I am. I'm having a lot of fun. And it's been really great with the amount of people coming in and being supportive and giving tips and asking questions. It's been great. It's been really great. Yeah, I bet you are. I've lurked on your Twitter a little bit as well. I'm really happy for you.
To read this in your own time, but for now it's not too important. What is really important instead is the velocity. This is what I want to first look at. If I click on it, we get the current velocity in pixels per second, used and modified during calls to move and slide. On top of that, we also see that the default is vector 2.
I don't understand why because velocity is a vector, but we do have direction is a vector, but it just gets multiplied. Yeah, okay.
0 and 0,
Sorry.
Which means the default velocity for character body 2D is no movement at all. And once we're changing the vector 2D of the velocity to something else, move and slide is going to move this body in that direction. Speaking of which, let's click on move and slide. This one moves the body based on velocity, the property we just looked at. And if the body collides with another, it will slide along that body. You can define a floor, but in our case, since we have a top-down game, we don't need to do that. There's a bit more information, but for now, this isn't too important. I guess one more thing that we could look at is that this method returns true if the body has collided, and otherwise it returns false, which can be useful information, but for...
Wait. What?
I guess one more thing that we could look at is that this method returns true if the body has collided, and otherwise it returns false, which can be useful information, but for this tutorial, we're not going to use it. With that, let me scroll all the way to the top, and there we can see another way to move a physics body 2D, which is called Move and Collide. This one has some slightly different collision behavior, but it's ultimately quite similar to Move and Slide. I am not going to cover this one for this tutorial because we don't need it. Move and Slide is what you're going to use most of the time. But just keep in mind, there are two different ones. Also, if you scroll down a bit further, you can see there are lots more methods that you could work with. For example, you could tell if the body is on the floor, is on a wall, is on a ceiling, stuff like that. It can be super useful. Especially if you create a platformer, this is going to be incredibly helpful. But for now, we don't need it. Since we are done with this one, I want to close this entry inside of the documentation, which you can do either by right-click and close or Control and W. And let me close the input one as well. We don't need this one either. So with that, back inside of the player, we are updating our velocity and we are using Move and Slide to move this body. Now that we have that, let me minimize the code and return to the level scene. First of all, I want to clean things up. We don't need this logo anymore, which means I can click on delete and get rid of it. On top of that, inside of scenes, we have logo GD. This script I also want to get rid of. Godot is going to complain that we are using this script inside of a scene, and I'm okay with that. So now we have the levels, we have level GD and level scene, we have the object, which is the bed, and we have the player. That is feeling like a much cleaner setup. Also, if you look at the debugger, now it's complaining again. So let's have a look.
It's complaining again.
We have, once again, the parameter delta is never used in the function process. If I double click on that, we get now process delta is not being used anymore. Let me minimize the debugger actually. This is something I should have covered as well. Move and Slide uses the velocity to move the character body, and it automatically includes delta. Because of that, we don't have to use delta in this process function at all. To indicate that we're not using it, Godot wants us to use an underscore at the beginning. That way, this delta is still available, but we're not using it. So now, if I run the code again, the debugger is happy again. Although now we're getting an error, because we got rid of the logo, so the level scene has quite a bit of code that is not relevant anymore. Inside of the ready function, we are using the logo, and that's the only thing we are doing in there, so let's get rid of all of that. Same with process actually, we can get rid of all of this as well. With that, I can run the game again, and now we have a much simpler setup. And this is still feeling good though. I guess while we are here, we can also get rid of the test function and the test array. That way, everything is nice and tidy. All we have to do now is add an exercise, and then we are done with the video. And for the exercise, we have quite a bit. I want you guys to create another scene that is going to be a static object. The specifics here don't matter too much. Basically, go through the graphics folder and look at the objects and just see what you want to create as a static object. In the end, it should look somewhat similar compared to the bed we made earlier. Besides that, I want you guys to create a moving scene with a drone, and this one should move constantly to the right. You can find the drone under the enemies folder inside of graphics. Pause the video now and try to implement both of these things.
Okay, I suspect he wants to do a character body for the drone, which makes sense. Okay, let's do this, and then we are gonna call it Why is this? Pass. Expected indented block after function declaration. Like that? What do you want from me? Remove it. Error at 10.1. Oh, that's not... I click in the debugger. Gonna tell me what it is. Failed to load script, levels, error with parser. What? Does it need? Doesn't need. What's the name? Process. Failed to expected indented block after function. Like, what's the problem? Just not copy this inside. What do you want from me? Leave me alone. Yeah, this works, but I don't know if you can tell. And I don't know if it has to do with the settings of my monitors or whatever, but it's really, really, really jittery. Really jittery. The character, like, sprite is jumping all over the place. Yeah, I don't think you can tell. Maybe just the refresh rate thing. No idea. Fail to load script. Scenes level GD. That's the script I'm in right now. Why are you failing to load? What the fuck is the problem? Expected indented block. Wait. No, it's the same as it is here. Maybe because of this. I don't know. Let's leave that for now. So he wants to make a static object. Okay. In a new scene. Let's see what we have for the graphics. Objects. We have a box. We can do a box. So it's gonna be static body 2D. It is going to have a separate, and it is going to have a collision box. Collision shape. There we go. I'm gonna put the collision above the sprite. No, not in the sprite. There we go. So first we need a sprite. But there we go. Oh, okay, this crate is pretty big. That I did not expect this. Let's rename this box or crate. Box image. Let's select a shape for it. Go. Alt was the rescaling thing. Oh, okay. You don't want the collision at the end because it's drawing on top of the image. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Create another static object in a new scene. There are a lot of graphics inside. Okay, that's done then. The only thing we need to do is save. We're gonna save inside of scenes, objects. It's gonna be box. Yeah. Call this box as well. Okay, that's the first part of the task done. We can close it. Also create a moving scene with a drone that moves constantly to the right. So we create another scene. We add a character body to be to it. Call this drone. It's going to have a sprite. And it's going to have a collision shape, maybe polygon. We'll see how the drone looks. Let's take enemies, drone. No, shape, sprite, drone. But oh, a circle is gonna be. So collision shape, circle. Right. That's done. And now we have to go into the drone, make a script. Let's save the scene first. It's not an object. Let's go one up. It's not a player as well, but let's do it here. Drone. Now we can do a script. You can save it in the player, sure. Basic move. We don't need that. There we go. And now now we have to use move and slide, right? And it has to have a velocity. No, we don't need move and slide. We just need velocity. Let me check. Layer. Yeah, we have velocity is gonna be the direction is, and that's gonna be 0. No, 1 0. Yeah, let's do that. And then move and slide, right? Yeah. So if we go here, before we do anything, we can set a direction again. And this time that's going to be, so that's a vector. It's going to be 1 vector 2 1 0, right? It's a variable, but there we go. We have a direction. We don't need to ready anything. And now we can say, what was it? Velocity equals direction. And then move and slide, right? Let's put it, let's actually put it in the level and see if that. Nope. So here, and we put a drone inside. Here, and we play the game. It's moving, but very slowly. Look, it's moving. Because we forgot to put it. We forgot to say here. Times. Should be slower or faster than the player? Should be a bit slower, right? 450. Whee! Oh my god, I got the hang of this, guys. We're gonna be making games in no time at all. I can't believe it that I'm actually managing to pay attention, although I'm streaming and talking and listening and reading and everything. This is pretty cool. Okay, let's see the explanation, and then I think we're gonna call it. Let's see if I did everything right.
Back in the editor, let's start with a static scene. For that, I want to create a whole new scene. Click on Other Node, because now the parent node is going to be a static body 2D. First of all, in there, we have to add an image. For that, I want to have a sprite 2D. And now for the sprite 2D, we have to look at graphics, and in there, we have a whole bunch of stuff. I want to look at objects, and for example, what we could be looking at is, let's say there's a billboard. This we could work with. And this I want to drag into the texture for the sprite 2D, and there we have a billboard. That's a pretty good start. Next up, I want to add a collision shape. There we have a collision shape, and now this one needs a shape. The shape we create inside of the inspector, and for this one, I think a rectangle would be the best shape. And
we did that
this shape,
with the
I now
box.
to extend a bit. Remember here, holding down Alt lets you scale the thing in either axis. And also, let me move this. You can use the arrow keys to move it by 1 pixel at a time. I think this one is looking good. Obviously, play around with this as much as you like. You can fine-tune things a lot in here. Cool. With that, we have a billboard.
It's also interesting to see that he always moves the sprite and leaves the collision shape in the center, which makes sense, because probably that's how you spawn stuff. I don't know.
Finally, to finish up the scene, I want to rename the static body 2D to billboard and then save all of this. I want to save it inside of scenes. There we have objects, we already have the bat, and now I want to save the billboard in the same folder. And that is all we need for the first part of the exercise. So back in the level, with the level selected, I want to add another child node, which I can do either by clicking on the chain symbol or with Control, Shift, and A. There we have our billboard. I can click on Open, and we have a billboard. You can also transform it inside of this level scene. All you have to do is go to Transform and then apply, for example, a rotation. Something like this. Now let's run the game. And there we have still.
Let's see if we have
this
collision.
one is looking really good.
For the box.
The bat also works, so I am very happy with this. What is annoying me right now is that the bat is on top of the player. And this is because the bat comes after the player inside of the node tree. To fix that, I want to move the player below the bat inside of this node tree. If I now run this again, this is feeling significantly more realistic. Later on, we're going to work a bit more with the drawing order, but this is a much better start. With that, we have covered the first part of the exercise. I can also close the bat scene and the billboard scene. We don't delete them, we just close them in the editor. We can still access them later on. I prefer to have as few tabs open as possible, that way things are a bit cleaner to work with. Now, next up, we have to create the drone. And this one, since it is going to move, is going to be a character body 2D. Which means, for the first node inside of the scene, I want to have a character body 2D. Once again, this character body 2D is going to need a sprite. The sprite we can find not inside of the objects, but rather inside of the enemies. There we have a drone, and this drone I want to move into the texture. That's all we need from the graphics folder. And next up, we have to add a collision shape. For that, I have the character body 2D selected, click on Ctrl A, and add a collision shape 2D. For this collision shape, I want to have a custom shape, which is going to be a circle shape. And if you now look very closely, we have a circle shape, and this I want to scale up to roughly capture the body of this drone. And once again with that, we have the basic setup. We have a physics body, an image, and a collision shape. With that, I can rename things. Let's call the parent a drone, and then save the entire scene. For all of this, I want to add another folder that I called enemies.
Okay.
Inside of this enemies folder, I want to have my drone.
So just to show this, if any of you are working along. So basically that's this setup here. And I can just create a new one in scenes. Enemies, and it kind of recompiles. I don't know if that's the right word, but you can see that it kind of went and loaded again. And now we can use this player, inside the player, the drone, and the script, and the node, or the object, and just move it up here. What? I just broke everything. What the fuck is all this? Is this gonna work? Failed to load script. Yeah, okay, you failed to load script because it's not here anymore. Fine. Close it. Doesn't it update automatically? Yeah, it does. Okay, everything works. It's fine. Everything's fine. Move along, people. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. But yeah, that's how you can do it after the fact if you mess up, I guess. Just wanted to show that.
And now back inside of the level, I want to add, with the level node selected, my drone, which I have all the way at the top. And let's move the drone somewhere here, so we can see it perfectly inside of the game. Cool. With that, we have a drone, and the collision with the player is still working. So that's a good start. To finish things up, we have to move this drone. And for that, inside of the drone is going to get a script. Meaning I want to attach a new script. It should be in the same folder as the drone, which it is right now. And for the basic setup, I want to have empty. I can click on create, and there we go.
It'd be interesting to see what's
script that is.
It'd be interesting to see what's in the template for the character movement thing. Let me check. So if we open up this, then let's put it on the sprite. It's not gonna have it now because it's let's create a new character real quick. Character body. And what's this template? Template basic movement, classic movement for gravity games. Ah, that's for the platforming. Okay. Let's see. Extends. Okay, we have a speed. We have a jump velocity. Variation, variable gravity. Takes it from the project settings. So let's look inside here. General. What? Project settings to the default gravity. Okay. So you actually change it here in the project settings and it changes it in code. We have a new type of function. This is a physics process. And if the object is not touching or on the floor, then the gravity is doing its thing. And it still needs to be times delta. Okay. Then if you press the jump button and you are on the floor, the y velocity is jump. Wait. Aha, but it's in minus. That's what I was interested here. Because y upwards is negative. So that's just a weird way of putting it. And then you have to remember this, or otherwise it's not going to work. This has to be a negative number. Okay. Get an input direction, handle the movement deceleration. It's a good practice. You should replace UI actions with custom. Okay. So direction input. So get axis. I think it's the same as what we did, but the difference between that's the input. Get axis. Axis. Get axis input by specifying two actions, one negative and one positive. Aha! We are not getting all the directions. We are just getting one axis of it, which makes sense. In this case, is getting the x-axis, right? And it's, I think, more for joypads. Okay, let's close this. If direction. Okay, move toward is a bit weird. And movement slide. Okay, I don't 100%. I basically know what it does, but I cannot go point by point like I did with this. This was pretty clear to me. Here it basically gets the left and right axis. Aha, I think get axis turns two inputs into just one number, right? That would make sense, because it would go into negative direction and in a positive direction, and then that goes times speed, and that just changes the x of the velocity. Else move toward 0. So maybe that accounts for, because it's a physics process, it accounts for the acceleration. So it's not a sudden stop, so it goes from 1 to 0, like. Yeah, okay. I kinda get this. Okay, but that's more for platformers, which is totally a different topic than what we're doing right now. Okay, let's look at this till the end.
To move it, we have to do something roughly similar compared to the player, which means, first of all, we will need a process function. This one is quite easy, func_process. And we know already we're not going to use delta, so I'm going to add an underscore right away. Inside of this function, we now, first of all, need a direction. Then we have to update the velocity. And then we have to call move and slide. The direction is the easiest because I want this drone simply to go to the right, at least for now. For that, I want to create a new variable, call it direction, like we have done for the player, except this one is just going to be a vector2 that has 1 and 0, which basically means we are going to the right.
That's
we can
exactly
actually
what
make
I
this
did.
a bit more expressive, because instead of 1 and 0, we can type dot, and in all uppercase letters,
right, yeah.
right. The outcome is going to be the same.
But now my question is, why is he declaring a variable inside a function process? Inside a process and not before? I don't think there's a reason for that, right?
Now that we have that, we can update the velocity. We have to target the velocity property and then get the direction and multiply it with some kind of speed. For this one, let's go with 400. Finally, all we have to do is call move and slide, and we should be good to go. Let's run the game, and there we go. We get the drone moving, and also we have collisions with the player.
Nice.
Let's try all of this again so you can see a bit better. So if the drone is colliding with the player, it's trying to wiggle around it. I guess making the movement speed a bit lower to 100 is going to visualize all of this better. Now we have a very slow drone and the player can't stop it. So there is collision between these two objects. And if the player is simply blocking a part of it, then the drone slides along the player, which is what we're getting because we are using move and slide.
Yeah, collide
this
probably
was
just
a super
stop.
important lecture, so I'm going to finish it here. But definitely play around with this in your own time. It's really important to understand. Once again, to finish up this video, this kind of setup is fundamental to basically any kind of game you do. You have some kind of physics book.
Ruby, you want to tell something to the stream? Let's see. Oh, coito. She just said hi, guys. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, like the neighbors are probably walking on the staircase, and she's just like a good guard dog, you know. She has to say, "Somebody's there." Let's see. Whoa. Oh. Okay. This was, I think, a very productive stream. We learned a lot. We laughed, we cried. It was a roller coaster. So thanks everybody for dropping by. And yeah, as you can see, it's easy. I mean, it's not easy, but you know, it's really fun once you start. Wait, music is too loud. So yeah, go learn guitar, go learn the language you wanted to learn, go make stuff and enjoy while doing it. You can also start streaming if it's gonna help you battle procrastination. That's the main reason why I started. But yeah, if you haven't done it before, it's probably very, very daunting to do so. But you know, why not? But thank you very much for joining me on this journey. And join the Discord. We're gonna hang out, and I'm gonna be streaming. I'm streaming now 3 times a week: Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, at least for 3 hours each time. And for Saturdays, it's gonna be probably a bit longer as well. Yeah, we got 2 hours into a 15-hour tutorial, but you know, as the description says, every journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So I'm definitely looking this long term, and yeah, let's just have fun and learn stuff together and create stuff. It's great. Thank you everybody that joined, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.